it's bullies. This is what I can't stand in the world. And we're the country that stands up to bullies.
Yeah.
And I hope, and I know that you will, but I hope we continue to be the good guys.
What does Canada mean to you? Like, how does it?
Canada means everything. I
left.
I wouldn't be anything without Canada. I
wouldn't be a millionaire in America.
The Canadian
without
taxpayers
Canada.
Subsidized our housing, gave me a fantastic high school. They had a television studio.
You get that education.
Yeah.
You get that perspective.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talented, but you get the opportunity to express that talent. I mean, you are talented.
Yeah. Well, thank you. That's very kind.
This is about as.
I think you're gonna do big things.
I hope so. Thank you. That's very nice.
This is about as organic as saccharin. And this is Mark J. Carnage Carney. Mark the Commie Carney. Mark CBDC Carney. This is the eve of the Canadian elections, people. So we're going to go a little hard for the rest of the night. Now you got Mark J. Carney and Mike Myers talking about how wonderful Canada is. One of them left to be the governor of the Bank of England for the last 10 years, lived in the lap of luxury over in Europe, serving the globalist interests over the last decade, trying to suppress the populist movement in as much as possible, Brexit. Talking to another guy who left Canada, I don't know, 30 some odd years ago, has been living like a king in America and talking about how amazing Canada is. It's so amazing that Mike Myers gets the subsidized education that he says is so great, gets his television studio that he says is so great, and then leaves to go make his fortunes in the wondrous free country of America. It's so good, Canada. It's good for everybody else who doesn't have the benefit, the privilege, the luxury of leaving. I can't even make jokes anymore. Stands up to bullies. You've got a man who left the country, presumably because of its oppressive tax regime, its lack of freedom, its shitty healthcare, free, but shit. Because when it's free, it's shit for everybody. And when it's shit for everybody, it's free. Leaves, goes to America, lives in his multi-million-dollar New York condo. I'm not kidding. This is Mike Myers, by the way. Talking about how Canada is so wonderful and great from abroad. You know, everything looks better in the rearview mirror, Mike Myers. Talking to the other guy who left Canada for a decade to make his wealth in Europe, who took his freaking company, Brookfield Assets Management, and moved it to New York out of Canada, presumably because of its oppressive tax regime, who's got his Cayman Islands offshore bank accounts. It might not be the Cayman Islands, but offshore bank accounts because of the oppressive tax regime. And these two phony jackasses who have lived at the lap of luxury for everything that America and the other countries of the world can offer, sitting there saying, yeah, I really hate the bullies. I hate the bullies so much that I moved to the land of the bullies. I hate the bullies so much that I live in, quote, Trump's America, which they are saying is the bullies' America. If you hate bullies so much, Mike Myers, you might want to leave America if you think Trump is a big bully and go back to Canada. No, you wouldn't do that, though. Don't have the same opportunities there. Don't have the same quality healthcare there that you can afford with your millions of dollars in America. Don't have the same view from your condo in New York. And they talk about bullies. And when they say confession through projection, because we say it all the time, it's a little known fact that I didn't know until Encryptus, the Jamie to the Viva channel, said, you know, Mike Myers has got a bit of a reputation for being I hate using the word toxic, but being a bit of a bully himself. This is from Meanest versus Nicest Celebrities from Sunny V2.
Clearly extends to his personal life. Mike Myers from Austin Powers is apparently much different when the cameras aren't rolling. Twitter users expose Mike Myers as an absolute nightmare to work with. The article referred to a tweet reading, Mike Myers had me fired off the set of The Love Guru because I made eye contact with him and I was there as his bodyguard. The tweet had been posted by a person named Jay Brody, who then expanded on the incident in a podcast.
You'll be basically regarding Mike Myers' trailer. They're like, here's the catch. Can't look at him. But I realized like I can't let just anyone into the trailer. So I look up, I catch his eye for a second. I give him a nod to let him know I'm cool. And then I look away, and within an hour, I get a phone call letting me know that I'm fired and I have to get off set.
Prompting other...
It's unbelievable. It's like the iron law of woke projection. You can just assume what is true of them based on what they accuse others of being. Trump a bully? Canada stands up to bullies? I'm going to tell you what's going on in Canada right now, people. But bottom line, tomorrow is election day in Canada. And if the Liberals manage to win, let alone win a majority, you will have the fakest, most disingenuous, anti-populist, globalist whores in charge of that country to continue doing what they've been doing by way of death and devastation in that country. Get out tomorrow and vote. And by the way, speaking of death and devastation in Canada, I'm sure you've all heard, but maybe you haven't, because I woke up to the news. Thank goodness I had my phone on Do Not Disturb, which I probably should have it on right now. Give me 1 second, people. We're going to do this. This is Dexter Taylor calling from prison. Give me a second, people. Bear with me, please. This takes 4 minutes to get the call from jail.
This is amazing that we're going to get Dexter
We're
Taylor.
going to do this. I'm doing this. I've been missing every call that he's been giving me.
Amazing.
The caller hung up. What the? He'll call back. We'll get to it. Speaking of death and devastation and what's going on in Canada, there was a vehicle attack. You know, when these things happen, Canada's no different than the rest of the world. A vehicle attack. A car plows into a group of celebrating Filipinos who are celebrating the Lupa Lupa Festival in the streets of Vancouver. They have a community, strong, vibrant Filipino community, and they're celebrating a holiday. And a car plows into the crowd. As of now, the death toll is up to 11. When I woke up this morning, it was at 9. And you hear it. Sorry, guys, we're gonna make this work here. I'm gonna put on mute so that you don't hear my credit card number.
Just so everybody knows what's going on, Dexter Taylor is calling from prison, and Viva has to accept the charges and actually pay for the call. He's taking care of that now. You're still on mute?
No, I'm off mute now. It's getting disconnected repeatedly because this is how the prison system works. Okay, sorry. This is going to be one heck of a disjuncted intro. The news of the day out of British Columbia, Vancouver, is that a man plows his car into a group of celebrating Filipino community. Within 3 hours, Vancouver police say, don't worry, guys, not terrorist related. Here, don't take my word for it. Vancouver PD, this is now 13 hours old, 4:34 a.m., say, at this time, we are confident that this incident was not an act of terrorism. I went through their Twitter feed just to see, how quickly they could come to this determination. They report it was 10 hours earlier, but you'll see the time frames between the tweets will have changed, but not those time frames. A number of people have been killed and multiple others injured after a driver drove into a crowd at a street festival on East 41st Avenue, Fraser, shortly after 8 p.m. tonight. The driver is in custody. We'll provide more information as the investigation unfolds. And then later on, update. That was 4 hours ago, so 6 hours later. As of now, we can confirm that 9 people have died after a man drove through a crowd at last night's Lapu Lapu Festival. Our thoughts are with all those affected. There was another one. At this time, we are confident that this incident was not an act of terrorism. That was 1 hour after they said Vancouver police investigates mass casualty events. So they go, you have the incident. They post 10 hours earlier, which is 4 hours before their confirmation that it wasn't terrorist related. And I'm not suggesting it was, by the way. I'm just going to highlight some patent, obviously, insane things that you're not in a position to assert. 10 hours earlier, they say there's been a mass casualty event. 3 hours after that, they say we're investigating the mass casualty event. 4 hours after the event, 1 hour after saying they're investigating it, they say they're confident at this time that it's not an act of terrorism. To which I merely have to say, I hate to ask the obvious question, but how did you rule out terrorism within at most 4 hours? Did you scour the man's social media accounts? Did you have access to his cell phone, his email? Did you map out his contacts over the last little while and see who they were? How on earth did you come to this definitive conclusion after mere matters of hours since the attack? Now, people were saying, Viva, but if you read the news, it said the man was known to police under certain circumstances. So people saying, Viva, he's just they've known him because he's a mentally ill individual with a history of mental illness. Okay. Who do you think terrorist organizations recruit? Just throwing that out there. Like, are you not familiar with the MO of terrorist organizations, which is recruiting people who are mentally ill sometimes? I'm replying, I was not putting this person on blast. They could rule it out because he was known to them. He had mental health issues, but the monies needed to get him help and being spent on safe injection sites, or at least that is my take. The fact that they know the guy, that he has mental issues, is not sufficient to exclude potential terror ties. Do you remember when the New Orleans incident occurred? And then at first it was, oh, this might be terrorist related. Then this FBI agent comes out and says, no, it's not terrorist related. And then lo and behold, she didn't have a damn good reason to say what she said. And then I believe she was shuffled out of her position. So I said, terrorist organizations recruit the mentally ill. So even if mental illness were true, it would not exclude potential terrorism and certainly not justify the bold claim after merely a few hours of investigation. Also, it's a festival featuring Filipino culture. The Philippines has a known problem with radical Islamic terrorism. I'm not coming to a conclusion. I'm just stating that excluding certain possibilities after cursory investigation is highly suspect. This was the original thing here. Here, this is just, I think this was from 2018. Ranks of ISIS recruits include mentally ill. The latest American charged with helping the terror gang had a psychiatric history. I'm not saying that it's the case, but you can't exclude it after 3 hours just because you knew the guy. And by the way, why the hell did you know the guy? Why the hell was the guy still on the streets? And then, just as relates to a little bit of history that some people might not know about, since the late 1960s, terrorism has been a major problem in the Philippines. These terrorist attacks often are carried out by several jihadists and militant groups with different ideologies and motives. Such acts of terrorism include bombings, domestic terrorism, kidnap, drug, extortion, mass murder, assassination, and other types of attacks. Terrorist groups like Abu Sayyaf, Bangsamoro Islamic Freedom Fighters, and Jamaat Islamiyah mostly operate in southern Philippines. The New People's Army maintains a wider range of operations across the country and launches attacks, albeit on lesser intensity than other rebel movements. Following September 11 attacks, the Philippines became a new front on the American-led war on terror. During George W. Bush's presidency, the U.S. sent foreign aid and American troops in the Mindanao to assist in counterinsurgency operations as part of Operation Enduring Freedom in the Philippines. The siege of Marawi ended in the death of several terrorist leaders and the reduction of the Islamic State presence in the Philippines. Oh no, but they know the guy's couldn't possibly be terrorist related because he's just a known mentally ill individual. So after 3 hours, after 1 hour of investigation, that's the conclusion they come to. I'm not making any statements. I'm just saying there are two types of lies on this earth. One, when you make a statement that you know to be factually incorrect. And two, when you make a statement, a positive or negative assertion, when you have no reason to believe that it is true or not. When you have insufficient grounds to make the statement. Now that the news is out, and I wanted to make sure that this video was indeed legit, it's cited in the Associated Press, so I can't be blamed now for not having done my due diligence to make sure this video is authentic. I'm not showing any videos of the attack. They're out there if you want to get nauseated. This is the individual after he had been apprehended by people. After plowing his car into as many people as possible, it only came to a stop because the vehicle got disabled as a result of the damage from running people over. This is him.
Smile! Smile, you fuck! Smile! Won't you fucking say what the fuck? Sorry, you fucking smile! Smile, you fuck! Smile! Won't you fucking say what the fuck? Sorry, you fucking...
It might be mental illness. It might potentially be something else. And there is absolutely zero way to exclude that within 3 hours definitively without looking like the same buffoon as the FBI agent who said wrongly that the New Orleans attack was not a terrorist incident. This is probably, more likely than not, a mentally ill individual who had not received the proper care and was probably given drugs. Hey, why not? It's British Columbia. The way to cure mental illness is to give them drugs. So that's what's going on in Canada. 11 people now confirmed dead. Several others are critically injured because that guy, allegedly, supposedly, just to cover my own tushy here, because if they've identified the wrong person, this is the source. 11 killed as a vehicle plows into a Filipino. The vehicle just plowed into the group. Police rule out terrorism. You see this? You see this headline? How the hell did they rule out terrorism? But at least they get to say for the time being, don't worry, guys. It wasn't terrorism. It was just a mentally ill individual not getting the treatment they needed because we sent all that money to Ukraine. Not getting the treatment they needed, but we gave them a safe place to go do some drugs. Vancouver, British Columbia police ruled out terrorism in a car ramming that killed 11 people between the ages of 5 and 65 at a Filipino heritage festival in the Canadian city, saying the suspect has a history of mental health issues. All right. Dozens of others were injured, some critically. A man driving a black Audi SUV entered the street after 8, struck people attending the Lapu Lapu Day Festival. A Vancouver man was arrested. It's the darkest day in Vancouver's history. Police interim chief Steve Ray told the news conference. The person we have in custody does have a significant history of interactions with the police and healthcare professionals related to mental health. Video of the aftermath shows the dead and injured. And 30-year-old man was believed to have been arrested. Rai was the man arrested after video circulating on social media shows a young man in a black hoodie with his back against a chain link fence alongside a security guard and surrounded by bystanders screaming and swearing at him. I'm sorry, the man says, holding his hand to his head. Ray declined to comment on the video. So that's what's going on in Canada, people. Don't worry. It's not terrorism. They haven't looked and they haven't found anything. And tomorrow's the election day, by the way. And Mike Myers is a big fat bully, hypocrite, scoundrel, who will tell you from the luxury of his American multi-million-dollar condo, it's good enough for you in Canada, guys. Stay there. I'm with you. Elbows up from America. Canada's the country that fights bullies from the country of the bully, allegedly. If you vote liberal, you're an idiot, people. I'm not telling you who to vote for, but get out and vote tomorrow. All right, people, before we get started on the show, we do have to thank our sponsor of tonight's show, and it's TWC. Now, hold on a second. Give me a second here. Let me get this up. 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 And people, could your health issues be caused by an invisible enemy that sabotages your body? Fatigue, bloating, brain fog. What if parasites could be the real culprit? Digging through parasite cleanses, came across this video from a trusted doctor. Check this out.
I can't hear that.
Oh, you can't hear any audio? Oh,
no, sir.
Well, the guy's talking about, I'll play the part afterwards without the audio, but you could read the captions. They're talking about stuff that you use to fight parasites and the fact that parasites are everywhere in food, water, pets. They secretly invade your body, wreaking havoc on your gut, energy levels, and even your brain. And the mainstream media medical system doesn't want you to think about it because one great cleanse could change your life. The Wellness Company has a solution for you. Ivermectin, mebendazole, FDA-approved parasite solutions now combined in one cleanse combo. You fill out the brief medical intake form, get your 3-month supply. There are lots of parasite cleanses on the market, and you'll see them on social media, but none of them are at the gold standard level of the Wellness Company. Maha is officially here, and the Wellness Company is making these hard-to-get medications digitally accessible so you can live your best life. Head over to twc.health/Viva. Promo code VIVA, you get you $60 off and free shipping. Don't wait to cleanse your body, people. Take back control today. twc.health/Viva for $60 off and free shipping. You got to figure out why there's no audio when we use the screen share through Rumble Studio. Why is Viva technologically challenged? I'm not. You see, this is the problem is now, even when it's not my fault, everyone thinks it's my fault. On Locals, for whatever the reason, when you set it up through Rumble Studio, it's been adding 4 hours to the scheduled stream on Locals. And everyone's like, Viva, you're an idiot. I'm like, I'm not that much of an idiot. So sometimes there are technological issues, glitches, that are actually not my fault. But alas, you live with the reputation you earn, and I have had so many technical glitches that were, in fact, my fault that I don't blame anybody for thinking every technical glitch that happens is indeed my fault. Now, before Barnes gets here, I have a few other things up on the lineup that we can start the show with. Canada. We're going to end with this after a second. Do you guys remember? Nobody knows who Omar Alghabra is because unless you're Canadian, you don't care. Omar Alghabra. Omar Alghabra was the minister of something or other for Justin Trudeau, and he's announced today that he's retiring. Listen to this. And spoiler alert, I loathe this guy. He's a disgusting scumbag of a human.
Hi, friends.
Hi, friends.
As my term as your member of parliament is coming to an end, I wanted to express my heartfelt gratitude to all those who supported me over the years, to those who opened their homes and hearts to me, and to those who encouraged me during the ups and downs.
The ups and downs.
You know, almost 20 years later, I would never have imagined how my journey in politics has unfolded. I love Canada, and serving you has been my greatest honor.
You should say
I want to specifically thank my staff, current and former, without whom...
forget it. We can skip that part. So he's retiring. I want everyone to remember who Omar Alghabra was politically. This was when Rebel News tried to ask Omar Alghabra a question. And I'm not going to say anything throughout this entire video, but you look at this man and you will understand why I loathe him. He is a despicable scumbag of a human, and this shall be his legacy. I had initially tweeted, you will never again be able to walk among your brethren. Enjoy your retirement. But that needs to be qualified so that people don't misconstrue what I mean by that. There can be no greater hell on earth than to be unwelcome among your people, to actually have no people among whom you can actually walk because you are so widely detested. And that's why I say you can have hell on earth. And Fauci's going to live it for the rest of his life, and may he live to a ripe old age. A ripe old age of a prison from which he cannot escape because he is unwelcome among civilized humans. Justin Trudeau is going to be there. Bill Gates is going to be there. Albert Bourla is going to be there. And so is Omar Alghabra. People who committed crimes against humanity in their response to the COVID. Listen to this. I'm just going to let it play.
Mr. Alghabra, yesterday conservatives brought forward a motion to denounce the threatening tweets of an accredited journalist. Why did some liberals say nay to that?
How are you today?
Do you not care about the safety of politicians in the House of Commons?
How are you today?
I'm great. How about you? Are you able to answer our question?
I'm enjoying this walk.
Why do you refuse to denounce journalists that threaten conservative politicians?
Are you doing well?
Are you able to answer our question, or is that just not in your mandate? Conservatives always answer our question. Why can't you do that?
I'm glad you're doing well.
You're not able to, eh?
I'm really happy for you, and I wish you success in your career.
What changed in the science between now and in 2 days in terms of lifting the RFK app? Or was it just political science?
Oh, you took your glasses off.
What?
You took your glasses off.
Yeah.
That's good.
So are you able to answer? You're not able. Is it intelligence or just you don't want to? All right, last question from me. You always talk about affordability, or Liberal parties say they want to fight for affordability, yet you're planning on raising the taxes, on continuing the carbon tax. Why won't you cut the taxes?
They have a nice day.
Oh, this right here. They laugh at your misery. They laugh at your misery. Like, I won't even use the word retarded here, because if you didn't know this individual, you would think that they were mentally challenged. How are you today? I'm glad you're okay. They laugh in the face of the misery that they have caused you. That's Omar Alghabra. Refuses to answer a question from a journalist, shit-eating grin on his face, waving at you, while Canada suffers. Hey, why wouldn't you waive the carbon tax? Well, because we're not going into an election. We'll only waive that when it's time for an election. We have to get rid of the dirty, the rotten wood. That's Omar Alghabra, retiring.
All right, sir. Have a great day. Good luck with this parliamentary session.
You too. You too. That is, if there's ever been a more quintessential moment for may you live forever. May you live forever, Omar. May you live to 95 years old, unwelcome among good, civilized people. Oh my goodness. That was Rebel News. Clip from Rebel News are fantastic. Oh, lordy, lordy, lordy. Now let me see something here. I don't want to get too far behind. By the way, so and anybody's new to the channel, the Sunday show is now across all platforms because I use it as the perfect opportunity to promote and advertise for the Rumble exclusive 4 o'clock lineup. There's a Rumble lineup. It's an amazing thing. It's got Tim Pool, Russell Brand, Steven Crowder, The Quartering, Jeremy, The Redacted is up there. And every day 4 o'clock is my slot on the Rumble lineup. So tune in for that. Tomorrow, I'm going to have on Myron Gaines, and I'm going to be on Myron Gaines' channel. We're cross-platform, we're cross-streaming. Myron Gaines and I are going to cross streams tomorrow, and we're going to have a good discussion because he's been in the news a little bit, and I've been on his show a while back. I got some questions, and we're going to have a lively discussion. Myron Gaines, 4 o'clock. We're on all platforms. I put everything pretty much on podcast. It's Viva and Barnes Law for the People, or Viva Fry Recovering Litigator, something. It's on Podbean. You can find it. And then we have our Locals After Party exclusively on vivabarneslaw.locals.com. Before I fall too far behind in all of this, Cousin Eddie says, I still don't believe the female Black Hawk pilot intentionally flew into the RJ. They did have the TCAS, Cousin Eddie is a pilot, by the way, turned off. Like I suspected, I think she got disoriented, experienced auditory exclusion, and the instructor failed to intervene because he was new. I've been in the seat of a student gets overwhelmed and confused. If I hadn't taken control, they would have killed us. It's a fairly common event when instructing aviators. You know what? This is probably a good time to talk about that news of the day also. Breaking news as relates to that horrendous crash outside of DC at the Reagan airport. I'm not going to make any, there's no jokes about this. I do know what people are, with darker senses of humor are making on the internet, but it seems that the pilot who was at the helm of that helicopter didn't listen to instructions from her instructor when he said turn left within 15 seconds of crashing into the plane that was carrying a bunch of figure skaters, I think, and 67 people died in that incident. The news breaking today is Black Hawk pilot failed to heed to flight instructor in moments before plane collision over DC report. Captain Rebecca Loback was running her annual flight evaluation during the crash. The pilot of the military Black Hawk helicopter that collided with a passenger airplane over DC in January ignored instructions to change course seconds before the crash, according to a new report. I happen to think the news is actually worse than this, or at least what we're going to get from the black box transcript is going to be worse than this, but they're getting ahead of the curve by building up to the catastrophic failure to heed to these instructions. That's my belief. I might be wrong. Bottom line, this is what they're reporting today, according to a new report. Report published by the New York Times on Sunday detailed the Black Hawk's exchanges with air traffic controllers in the lead up to the disaster, which left 67 people dead. And by the way, Viva, you don't trust the New York Times until they tell you something that you like. The New York Times is part of propaganda control, narrative control. So if they're releasing this now, it's to soften the blow of what I suspect will be coming a little bit later on. According to the report, the Black Hawk pilot, Captain Rebecca Loback, was conducting her annual flight evaluation, and her co-pilot, Chief Warrant Officer 2, Andrew Lloyd Eves, was serving as her flight instructor. When air traffic controls informed the Black Hawk that there was an airliner nearby, Loback and Eves acknowledged the message and requested to fly by, quote, visual separation, end quote, a common practice that allows aircraft to avoid collision based on their own observations rather than following instructions from air traffic control. The Black Hawk was, quote, the Black Hawk was 15 seconds away from crossing paths with the jet. Warrant Officer Eves then turns his attention to Captain Loback. He told her he believed that air traffic control wanted them to turn left towards the East River Bank. The Times wrote, quote, turning left would have opened up more space between the helicopter and Flight 5342, which was heading for runway 33 at an altitude of 300 feet. She did not turn left, the report said. Then we get into the rest. So apparently he told her to turn, and apparently she did not turn, and that's the latest with that horrendous tragedy. And I suspect it's worse than what the New York Times is not leaking, but releasing by way of piecemeal information. Howard the Duke, over in our vivabarneslaw.locals.com community, says, in addition to obstructing an ICE arrest, the Judge Hannah Dugan not also guilty of interfering with an official government proceeding, namely the pretrial conference she was presiding over. Might I suggest pretrial detainment without bail at Milwaukee's version of the DC Gulag, a la treatment of many Jan 6 defendants? More importantly, how come, this is not coming here, where is it? How come the Trump team used the incident to galvanize popular opinion and deter other judges? More importantly, how can the Trump team use it? We're going to get into it. Howard the Duke. Let me see what's going on over on Rumble. I read Letitia James' attorney, Abby Lowe, is being paid by the New York Attorney General's office. Is it legal to have taxpayers pay her legal fees for her fraud trial? Well, I don't think she's going to trial just yet, but I suspect it. I don't know. We'll talk about that with Barnes. Justice Roberts will be remembered as the head of the courts when the judges became clowns. All the Trump cases, the partisan blocking, executive action. Judge refuses to hold court. One arrest for obstruction and one arrested for destruction of evidence. Never forgot who let it happen. Chief Justice Roberts. They better find some way to put Duggan in jail for 5 years and max fine and make an example out of these jokers who should not be anywhere near the bench. I'm getting fed up with no actual consequences. I'm ready for jail, ready to see jail. It is time. We're going to talk about that one. You got to steal, man, what her defense might be. I have a lot of jokes. We'll get into that. I got that one too. And then do I see we have a new member of our locals community, EBM 444 donated. Booyah. Let me make sure that Barnes is coming in.
I already messaged him, but you also have some super chats in your DMs.
Okay, DMs over there. Let me see if I can find these over. If I can still access them, I can't. So I'm going to do the DMs over on Twitter, where Agent Guru _IO is sending them to me. We got Jack White. Question: Do you guys think with this tour AOC is doing with Sanders, is he attempt to try and run for the presidency in 2028? If so, how successful do you think she'll be? I've heard people saying it. Bernie is never going to run again. I don't think. Whether or not he's using his goodwill and trying to impart it or, hand it over to AOC, we'll see. AOC looks like she's getting into the mode to run. I would say that she's the worst, among the worst of the candidates, but she's mildly charismatic and mildly good with the young people. And when you compare her to the other candidates, the leading prospects, Gretchen Whitmer, I don't know, Kathy Hochul, maybe not. What's his face? Gavin Newsom. I mean, it's like dividing by zero as to how bad their options are, but she certainly seems to be making a run for it. And Jack White says, and do you guys think that the commie candidate who's running for the mayor of Manhattan will be the nomination and the mayor's office? Which commie candidate in New York? There's a couple of them. Jack White says, become the mayor of New York, and the worst case scenario if he does. And we got Gorilla Strength Equipment says, testicular injuries in women's sports are at a 4 years low under Trump JFK. That's funny. Okay. Forced name change. Hello, Viva and chat. If we make it to immigration issues, please read the X-Suite. Was that tweet? X-Suite? I put on your post for this stream. I can't afford to put it into super chat. Lil funny, lil preposterous, very trolly. I'll have to find it. And we got Pasha Moyer, who says, Viva, if you are planning to cross your streams, remember to be very, very careful. I will. But now I'm getting a little concerned that Barnes is casually late, but this is getting late even for Barnes. Hopefully he hasn't gotten arrested. Okay, hold up 1 second. We're just going to do this over here. And I haven't gotten a call back from Dexter in jail. Well, this was the other one I was going to start with. We're not yet done with Canada. Yasser Naqvi. Who's Yasser Naqvi? This is the Liberal Party of Canada, by the way. The leader, Ottawa Centre, needs to stand up for Canada. This is what Yasser Naqvi puts up on Twitter.
Be blunt. Let's be blunt. If you're protesting pronouns, you are not debating policy. You are harassing and scaring children outside their schools with megaphones and hate. And it's not just fringe voices. Conservative governments are backing this, some even threatening to use the notwithstanding clause to strip our most vulnerable kids of their rights. It's disgusting. That's why I fought to create bubble zones to keep hate away from schools. I won't stay silent while kids are bullied. I will always stand up to hate and protect every child in our community. Let's be blunt.
Let's be blunt. First of all, now that we're more than 9 minutes into the show, I can be blunt as well. Let's be blunt. If you are discussing pronouns with children that are not your own, you are a fucking pervert that deserves to be on a watch list. Yasser Naqvi. I mean, are we noticing a bit of a trend in Canadian politics? I suspect we are. Yasser Naqvi, do you know where he's born? Not that it matters. Yasser Naqvi is born in Karachi, Pakistan on January 25, 1973. I'd like to know what level of tolerance there is in Pakistan for what Yasser Naqvi is promoting by way of normalizing grooming of children in Canada. You know where Omar Alghabra was born? It's very interesting. Al-Khobar, Saudi Arabia, 1969. Roughly 1 in 5 MPs in Canada was born outside of Canada. What could possibly go wrong? Oh, all right. Well, we're gonna start with the. Do I get nervous for Barnes yet? Hold on a second. Are you still alive? Question mark, smiley face. The crowd is chanting for you! Exclamation point. We might have to. Oh, there he is. Okay, woof. Let's say whenever Barnes is beyond LA late, I get nervous that he's gotten picked up by the feds. I mean, when you fight corruption, corruption fights back, and they might have gone and picked up Barnes while he's figuring out some. I hear him. You should find my reply to his crap in the post by Peb. I'm not Andre. I'm not Mr. Barnes. How goes the battle, sir?
Is it all good?
Yeah, it's good.
See me all right?
I get nervous when you're later than normal. I seriously think you get picked up by the feds. But the feds now, they probably like you, but maybe you get picked up by the Nevada feds.
Yeah, no, just had some internet issues. I was trying to figure out my computer system and all that because we're doing in the middle of moving bits and pieces from here in Vegas to Tennessee. So the consequently cords are not where they're supposed to be and whatnot. Like I said, I'm not a boomer. Only play one on TV.
Robert, I've been doing my best to not to get into the substance of the night until you got here. On the evening menu tonight, we've got more rogue judges. We've got injunctions against Trump. We've got them going after RFK Jr. for actually substantively linking whatever is causing increase in autism to autism. We've got, what else do we have on the menu?
Yeah, we got the Canadian election tomorrow, which I assume you probably already covered the landscape of, but we'll see how it goes. Mm-hmm. If you want to see what bets what I think is going to happen in the Canadian election, you can go to sportspicks.locals.com. Going to be posting tonight the last picks for the election for those that haven't yet got into the betting markets. We've got judges gone wild all over the country. And so we'll be covering that. State judges getting arrested, federal judges issuing insane orders. Maybe SCOTUS will step in somewhere. We'll find out. We've got Santos getting sentenced to something that they wouldn't sentence. That, while they're busy helping make sure, wife beaters and rapists and molesters and abusers and robbers and thieves and gang members are free in America, the liberal judges are making sure those dangerous Republicans go in for as long as possible, no matter the nature of the charge. The Supreme Court, schools, religion, up there in two different contexts. One context, which was had oral argument this week about they're trying to teach elementary school kids. They're trying to stick their indoctrination down the throats of kids without the option of being able to opt out. We'll discuss that, as well as charter schools, Catholic charter schools receiving state funding. That case is also heading to the Supreme Court. While the Supreme Court's deciding copyright issues, there was a good copyright case that was linked by one of our board members at vivabarneslaw.locals.com. When they're trying to hold ICP internet service providers liable for copyright infringement unless they delete and ban accounts. That's a very dangerous precedent.
That is an attempt to that's actually just an indirect way to try to control narrative and news and unfavorable news. Claim copyright, make it, take it down.
Absolutely. And now what they're demanding is that the internet service provider prohibit that person from being able to access the internet again. That's it. And then if they don't, the internet service provider has to write a check. And the last check they were ordered to issue was $46 million, $33,000 per song that was shared over peer-to-peer networks. This is a very perilous precedent that now goes up to the Supreme Court to decide whether to get involved. We've got illegals in due process, which continues to get confused in certain circles and segments of legal society. RFK's finally stepping forward. We're getting an administration that actually cares about public health. Banning food dyes is like, if you want, petroleum in your food, you can have it. Just don't force it on the rest of us. At the same time, trying to get fluoride out of water. And at the same time, trying to, the federal government's been spending tons of money to make sure little kids are as fat as possible by giving them as much crap, ultra-processed food. He's trying to get that out. And raising the issue and alarm of what has happened to autism, which has the most insane liberal defense yet. Autism is good, everybody. We should have more autism, according to the left. And if you think otherwise, you're just a mean bigot. So the next time somebody blinds you, you should send them a thank you note. When the next time someone cuts off your leg, you should send them a courtesy gift. That's the new logic of the left. And while they're busy trying to normalize pedos, trying to normalize trainees, trying to force it on your kids, they're now trying to normalize disease as not really a disease at all. That if you get a third eye, isn't that wonderful for you? You have extra vision. This is the insanity being promoted by the left in the latest libelous attack on Bobby Kennedy. Wikipedia might have their tax status up for grabs. Finally, somebody's looking at what some of us have suggested for a while, which is that these big non-governmental organizations, which are really governmental organizations in disguise, that they face meaningful civil and criminal scrutiny for their illicit activities, including being overtly engaged in the censorship business and the manipulation of information business. Why should our tax dollars go to subsidize that? Finally, there's some re-examination of it. The Karen Reed trial being covered by Nick Rekieta and the law of self-defense. This retrial commences again, which strikes me as rather preposterous. But once you're a corrupt cop committed to a case, by golly, you got to see it all the way through. Janitors at Columbia University are suing the protesters, exposing the pro-Palestinian Hamas crowd for what they actually did, including using the Ku Klux Klan Act of 1871, which might give you a little bit of a roadmap for some other cases that might be coming down the pipeline from new Civil Rights Division head Harmeet Dillon, who she said she needed some podcasts to go on. I recommended the inimitable Viva Fry is the one that she should go on.
She's already been on, so she can't even say that I'm too extreme or foul-mouthed to come back. Or she could say that, she wouldn't say that. Absolutely. I think I have her number, actually. I'll DM her.
Yeah. I think it'd be a great, I think she's already having success because the wrong people are already leaving, and that's a good thing. Mm-hmm. When are there limits on a class action? What if a class action is denied? Can it be reinstated or brought back later? And when can you sue after you're dead? Lawsuit after death. A Tennessee Supreme Court case from this past week.
Robert, before we get into anything, I want to bring this one up right here. It says, TZ Burton, Viva, my wife's family was at the Lapu Lapu Festival in Vancouver. They are okay. There was only a street sign that indicated the street was closed, no barrier erected. And it's going to turn out to be the exact same thing as the police chief didn't know they had barricades for street festivals. It's criminal, obviously. The only question is how far and what is the actual. TZ Burton, if you can find me, I don't know if you can DM me, but I'll try to find you and send you an email.
You know how you can know it wasn't a conservative that was politically motivated to do it? The media came right out and said there was no political motivation. No, what they mean is there was no conservative political motivation.
It's just
there might have been a liberal political motivation, but they always say no political motivation when it's not the right one that they want it to be.
Yeah, within 3 hours. I mean, within 3 hours. It doesn't make sense. But speaking of political motivation, Robert, what's his face? Santos. George Santos. So he pleaded guilty to 2 counts of fraud, embezzlement, I think appropriating benefits, work benefits. He was indicted on many, many more charges than that. And I would imagine, like I've read through it. We went through the actual indictment very briefly, but it looks like, I would say, dead to rights in as much as it seems that they had the evidence for the alleged fraud that they alleged against him. He pleaded guilty to 2 charges, begged for clemency. And then the question is whether or not it was malicious prosecution or weaponized prosecution, because others have done the same thing. But it looked pretty clear cut, like charging people's credit cards without their permission, using fake accounts to make donations, and embezzling the funds from the account into his personal account, lying as to the purposes of or not the providence, but the purpose of the funds being raised. There was another one. Oh yeah, the claiming of the benefits because he was still getting paid during COVID, but claiming he wasn't. These things are like, they seem objective. I still feel a little bit bad when people, not to say these are not victimless crimes. Even the allegations were that some of these people that he was stealing money from were disabled and it can kill people to steal their money when they live on thin means. But 87 months feels a little punitive given what others have done that they didn't even get charged for, let alone sentenced to, especially since he only pleaded guilty to 2 counts, begged for the statutory minimum, I think, which was 2 years. The prosecution went with the standard guidelines, which was 6 to 8, and the judge came down hard. Now, you're going to go, and I imagine you're going to say, like, he's politically disfavored because now he's on the right after having fled from the left. Just, I appreciate the guidelines. And just tell me, I'm not being a sissy Canadian. 87 months is pretty stiff for what he did, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, again, it's a longer sentence than most rapists get in the state of New York. So, I mean, that gives you an idea. Serious criminals are walking, while political criminals are getting the maximum sentence thrown at them. And so I think the sentence was way out of whack. What you would typically see in a case like this, where the amount of fraud isn't really something insurmountable, it isn't Madoff or anything like that. The people defrauded in many cases are supposedly the government. Okay, you take that with a requisite grain of salt. So what you would normally get, he would normally get 2 to 3 years. That would be the norm when especially someone who's pled out, didn't force him to go to trial, etc. So to get as long as he did, he got as long as he did because he's a Republican. It's that simple. It's just also why he got prosecuted. Now, what this case does is embarrasses Pam Bondi. Some people are calling her Pam Barbie, others calling her Pam Bondi, depending on the circumstances, because of lack of action by the Justice Department. And we got a few more cases this week, but still not nearly as many. As some people pointed out, there was already major criminal investigations into Trump by this point in the Biden administration, and hundreds of Trump supporters had already been arrested and put in prison.
This is the best one. Pam Bondi in action figure. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. All she's got is Fox News. She's got all those Epstein files on her desk that she's managed not to release yet. But what it does is, this is what Santos has pled guilty to. About half of Congress does every single day. And most of the Democratic Party does routinely. And almost every new politician in New York does routinely. And yet none of them are being prosecuted. And so it glares out to Bondi. Oh, I just can't do anything. Oh, we're going to get around to it. Biden administration had no hesitation at all to immediately go after Santos and anything they could get and find because he'd won a contested swing seat that then gave them more power with the House. And yet, and look at how easy it is. I mean, not being fully accurate in his disclosure of his congressional forms. I wonder how many members of Congress have done that. More than half, be my guess. So, I mean, that's the point, is that all these things are things that you can indict anybody up there for, people that have committed real crimes against the American people. And yet, Bondi's Justice Department is busy making sure Santos gets a maximum sentence while not doing anything against anyone else. At what point does she get called out for the fraud that she kind of is becoming? I was giving her some, grace, but when I see, Santos can be maximum prosecuted, but not another member of Congress can be. Where's the prosecution against Adam Schiff? Where's the prosecution against Swallowswell? Where's the prosecution against that whole? I mean, all these people have committed multiple crimes over the past decade, and yet there's no evidence that Pam Bondi is doing anything about it. She's too busy to make sure Republican Congressman George Santos goes to jail for doing lesser things than they did.
It's I feel bad for the guy. I think he's a pathological. I mean, he's pathological.
He's a politician. He's exactly what everybody else is up there. About 2/3 of them. The difference is he didn't do it at scale. The difference is he didn't go into bed with Soros and Bill Gates. The difference is he wasn't a friend of the Democratic Party or the liberal agenda or the establishment goals. The difference is he wasn't in bed with the deep state. That's why he got prosecuted. What he did is something that a majority of members of Congress you can easily find have already done in one way, shape, or form. The insider trading is illegal, and yet members of Congress do it all the time. How did Nancy Pelosi get so rich? How did Mitch McConnell get so rich? How's pretty much every member of Congress got so fantastically and fabulously rich after they got into power? A lot richer than George Santos ever got. How did that happen? Everybody knows it's open, brazen criminality. And yet, again, Bondi Justice Department, which, by the way, is still busy defending Biden-era policies before the Supreme Court. We'll get to that in a bit. Mm-hmm. I mean, this incompetency is just staggering.
Well, they're
mounting and compounding and mounting and compounding.
They're still pursuing ostensibly the prosecution of Roger Ver, which
is also preposterous. It's directly contrary to Trump's policy. Still failing to take action. Their brief is due this week in the Brooke Jackson case. And yet they failed to correct the fact that the Bobby Kennedy has completely reversed the Health and Human Services Division. And yet Bondi has done nothing because Bondi doesn't check. But there's still the case against Amos Miller is still open. I mean, it's preposterous at this stage. She doesn't know what she's doing. She's clearly incompetent and incapable. And what my recommendation was, we'll put somebody underneath her that actually knows what they're doing. And maybe then she can just hog the limelight like she loves. She loves to be in front of Fox News cameras. That's all she's good at. I mean, in truth, when she was defending Trump during the impeachment, she wasn't very good at that. So there was nothing about her to suggest she was a skilled lawyer. And now we're just saying, I don't want to, especially when I see cases like Santos. It's like, okay, this was a case brought by the Biden administration. Why is the Trump administration even part of this? They should have recommended a lower sentence, get rid of this, move on. It's a garbage case of a low-profile case that was used by the Biden administration to remove a Republican congressman from a swing district. Everybody knows that's what it was. I doubt she even has a clue. Unless it's on Fox News, she doesn't know it exists. It's becoming obvious, and it's becoming embarrassing, and it's becoming bad for Trump. And you're seeing the anger level within Trump's base, from Steve Bannon, Mark Robert, represents it as well. The frustration level is rising and rising and rising and rising, with the complete lack of action from inaction figure Pam Bondi.
Well, I've just tweeted it out, people. Can Robert, I'm going to nudge Robert because they should get Pam Bondi to intervene in the Brooke Jackson. I'm going to share that with everybody so that people can go and spread the word. It makes no sense.
Kennedy's doing great work.
No, but sure, but
this is all on Bondi not doing her job.
Am I naive in thinking like members of the administration can nudge the others, and Bobby might have?
Definitely, no question about that. But I have reason to believe that she has been so budged, and she just refuses to move. It wasn't on Hannity last night, so I'm not sure it exists. Are you sure it exists? This is Pam Bondi. She's a joke at this point. They need to fix that quickly. Now, I think I am hopeful that Harmeet Dillon at the Civil Rights Division will take action. But they haven't put new people in at the Civil Appellate Division. They haven't put new people in at the Key TAM Division. They haven't put new people in at key components of U.S. attorneys' offices across the country. So, and this is just one more illustration where she's behind the eight ball. In other words, it seems like all she's doing is she's reacting rather than being proactive. That's a problem.
I was going to find a way to segue that perfectly into one thing. Forget about it. Okay, so very interesting. Now, but what have they done? Bondi, to their credit, this week they indicted 2 judges, or at least they arrested.
Well, it doesn't appear like this happened spontaneously. She wasn't responsible for this. The local ICE officers were. So credit to them, and credit to the Justice Department's taking action. But she should have been proactively involved in this. This should have been part. Look, the entire bureaucracy, federal and state judiciary, is the last obstacle to constitutional liberty in this country, sadly enough. And the fact that she didn't realize that was problem number one. The fact that she got hosed the way she got hosed on the Epstein docs, which is very embarrassing this week, because now you have Virginia Giuffre, the prime accuser of Prince Andrew, the prime person who outed Epstein, who said she would never commit suicide, somehow committed suicide this week, somehow ends up dead. So a key witness is gone. This is someone who's way in over her skis. The only person that's probably more incompetent in the Trump administration is Brooke Rollins, the Secretary of Agriculture at the USDA, who hasn't delivered on much of anything of the Trump agenda that I can see. So it's cases like Santos, cases like the Supreme Court case we'll talk about in a bit, Obamacare case. Here's an example. The Obamacare case, Trump opposed the Obamacare policy of having this task force that was not appointed by the president or the president's elected or appointed officials to dictate what all healthcare coverage would be in America. Right? This was always unconstitutional. Now it's pending before the Supreme Court, and I was like, how is it still pending before the Supreme Court? This was a Biden administration position from an Obama policy that Trump opposed. Pam Bondi probably doesn't know it exists because I don't think she's even checked the Supreme Court docket for the cases she's involved in now. That's how embarrassing it's becoming. So it's representative of an ongoing problem, but at least credit to ICE, who are not taking any more crap from rogue judges who are the number one aider, abetter, and enabler of illegal immigration in this country are bureaucrats, NGOs, and judges. And at least a couple of them got caught this week.
We're going to get to that in a second, just because I want to actually mention this before I forget. This is from Shadow of Ezra, but this screenshot is around. Virginia Giuffre publicly declared that she is not suicidal and warned that if anything happens to her, the people should ensure those responsible are held accountable and never forget their actions. Too many evil people want to see me quieted. This is her post. I am making it publicly known that in no way, shape, or form am I suicidal. I have made this known to my therapist and GP. people are going to be able to exploit that part there. But if something happens to me in the sake of my family, do not let this go away and help protect them. Too many evil people. Robert, the news broke this week. To me, it's like, it's, I don't believe it, period. I don't believe that Epstein killed himself. I don't believe that Virginia Giuffre killed herself. I'm not sure that I believe that she's dead, but I do have to believe that part. This is in the wake of, like, what was it, a month ago, where she says, I've got 5 days to live, and then says, no, I made a mistake. I accidentally posted something publicly that was from a private message, as if that would have made any more sense. To me, it sounds like there were 2 attempts to make this happen, and now they've made it happen. Not to get too conspiratorial, do you believe that she took her own life?
I think it's right to be suspect and skeptical of that claim, given the circumstances and situations surrounding it. And I think it's not helped by the fact that information is being delayed from being publicized. This was this is something Bondi herself made a huge deal out of. Said she had all the documents, she was going to be disclosing them, then didn't disclose anything of consequence. And people were like, what's going on? And so it looks like they're just running circles around her. Her own Justice Department is running circles around her. They're sabotaging the president's agenda. Take, for example, on the illegal immigrant, the whole Maryland case that sort of blew up. That was a rogue lawyer for the Justice Department. That was not a Trump Justice Department appointee. That was a rogue lawyer who, as Stephen Miller has correctly said, was a saboteur. We now know he lied about what was in the immigration court order. The immigration court order never prohibited the deportation to El Salvador. Only prohibited, in the plain language of the order, Guatemala. Now, there's some people that claim that the immigration judge intended to include El Salvador. It's very rare to intend something and not be in the written order of a court. That's how that whole thing got sidetracked, is because, she has saboteurs throughout her entire department and appears to not realize this. And that's what I find even more disturbing. She's showing no control of her own Justice Department, that they are continuously sabotaging. And for those that don't remember, Bill Barr was neck deep with Epstein. Bill Barr's father was the one who was the principal at the Dalton School that, on his way out the door, hired Jeffrey Epstein and gave him initial access to these people. Then wrote a really weird book in which it involved sexual abuse as a fantasy book, sexual abuse of underage girls. That was Bill Barr's dad. Bill Barr was deeply embedded with the Bush family, was there at the CIA when they were busy deleting and destroying files. Everything about Epstein screams that he was involved with intelligence operatives around the world. Ghislaine Maxwell's father Robert Maxwell was neck deep in it until he had an accidental death by falling off his boat and drowning.
Robert, I say I try not to get thoroughly black-pilled. I feel stupid now for not even having put that together, because the Kalshi markets had release of Epstein documents within the first 100 days of Trump's office. That comes to an end on May 1st, this Thursday. They promised the documents. They didn't release them. Within the delay of not releasing them, now the lead witness of Epstein's sex trafficking, Prince Andrew's criminality, allegedly took her own life after claiming to have only had 5 days to live after an alleged bus accident, but said, holy shit, Burns.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying it's starting to look really bad. They're doing. It's not a surprise that the system would do this. It was predictable the system would do this, but that's what finds it unsettling, that she seems so ill-equipped to have the system smack her around the way they're doing. Of which the Santos case is an example. The Epstein documents are the most egregious example. The absence of criminal prosecutions against all these other rogue actors is a problem. Now, again, for example, they should have been acting quickly on Letitia James. That information that she was involved in fraud was there early on. Instead, it took another agency making a referral for them to do their job. That's what's concerning to me, is they're simply reacting while the entire bowels of the bureaucracy run circles around them over and over and over and over and over again. Now, credit to the people on the ground, like those ICE officers arresting these judges. What these judges did, there's no immunity for whatsoever. They just engaged in criminal behavior, and they thought because they were judges, they could get away with it.
So I guess we'll do both cases, because the irony is now where you say, oh, a judge got arrested for harboring an illegal alien, and everyone thinks they're talking about the New Mexico judge. Was his name Juan Cano? It wasn't Juan. It was Jose. Well, it was whatever. It was Cano, Cano. I was like, no, not that judge. Another one. I'm going to pull up the mugshot while you talk about this. But there were 2 arrests, 2 charges. One was for obstruction, deleting evidence as relates to Judge Joel Cano, harboring not just an illegal alien, a member of TDA, alleged. Like, he hasn't had a hearing on the merits yet that definitively determined that he's a member of the Tren de Aragua, the most notorious, murderous, villainous gang on earth. He hasn't been determined to be one yet, but allegedly had, apparently videos and pictures of decapitated people on his phone. The judge was harboring them, and more than one, because they had used him to do some handiwork around the house. Apparently the wife did, and then maybe he fell into an amorous relationship with the daughter, who was then giving him guns or access to guns. That was one of the cases. He was arrested after he resigned from the bench, after he was banned from ever sitting again by the New Mexican Bar Society, whatever the hell it is. And the second one is this judge, Dugan, who allegedly, as ICE agents were trying to apprehend an illegal alien, either directed the alien, apparently this either into a witness booth or a box within the courthouse, or harbored them in the courthouse, told them to go out the back door to evade ICE. And ICE thus was frustrated in their ability to arrest, detain, and probably deport this illegal alien. And they booked the woman. Which one do you want to start with? Do you want to start with the... do you think this is there anything sexual about all this? Not like the gang members having relations with the wife. Is there a potential for human trafficking involving the judges? Because you have judges involved in locking up kids, cash for kids. I wouldn't be surprised if there's cash for kids in other contexts, though there's nothing more to substantiate that. What's your take on this?
Well, you look at the Milwaukee judge. She apparently has connections to the Catholic charities. That we'll see how these Catholic organizations operate with the new Pope. Now that Pope Francis is checked out, there was a fun Babylon Bee thing about different people afraid to meet with J.D. Vance now because the Pope meets with him the next day, he's gone. But leave it to the bee. But there you have someone that was neck deep with NGOs facilitating illegal immigration in the country, and the judge has direct connections to that, according to published reports. So what I've been saying for a while is the professional managerial class are the implementers of this sort of globalist agenda, whether it's economics, whether it's culture, whether it's politics, or anything else. And part of it has been the facilitation of mass illegal immigration into the country in order to drive down wages and replace American voters. I mean, and then I think some people would suggest to destabilize those societies and away from nationalism. George Soros is open. Again, George Soros calls his organization Open Borders for a reason. So that's what these people believe in, and they're deeply embedded within it, and they've been enriched and empowered by it. So before they ever became judges, you'll often find direct connections. While they're judges, take the Judge Boasberg that intervened in the case of illegal immigrants that Trump was trying to get out of the country that were dangerous gang members, and it had been listed as part of a foreign terrorist organization. That judge's daughter works directly to help promote illegal immigration in the country. The daughter's wife is connected to abortion services for illegal immigrants. So, I mean, they're all making money off of it. They're all getting empowered by it. That was the globalist deal. The globalist deal was you professional managerial class will get privilege, prestige, and power in exchange for promoting our agenda against the interest of the American people, against the interest of constitutional liberty. It's what Mike Benz has been detailing in the so-called Rule of Law Project. They're always Orwellian named, right? Orwell was so far ahead of the curve on this, about how they will name things the opposite of what they are. The rule of law was meant to undermine the rule of law. That's what the Rule of Law Project was around the world. And in order to destabilize government. So this is part of an institutional policy. So I've been saying forever, all you do is scratch the surface a little bit, and you'll find all kinds of criminality with these groups and individuals, including bureaucrats and judges. And all they're doing is they're just arresting the most egregious examples. For those that don't know, I mean, what the Milwaukee judge did, you can detail it.
Robert froze up. I don't know if that's me. All right, Robert, you still there? Well, it's getting pixelated. Hold on. While Robert gets the connection back, I thought I was texting privately to Encryptus to make sure that this is the actual mugshot. I hope it is. And if it's not, internet, please correct me. Until Barnes gets back, we'll detail. This is the mugshot. Encryptus, are you there? Is this the real mugshot?
I'm looking. So there are quite a few AI generated versions of her mugshot, like one of her crying.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is the real one or not. There is a real one going around, but I can't really tell the difference at this point. There's too many of them.
Yeah, and not just that, like, this very much looks like an actual animal known as the blobfish. If you don't know what the blobfish is, go look it up. While the chat confirms if this is real or not, because I don't want to be guilty of spreading disinformation. Robert, tell us what she did. I thought what she did is, like, they're coming to arrest him. Can they arrest an illegal in a courthouse? You can't serve someone.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Okay, fine. So what did she do exactly? Or, like, I didn't. I summarized it accurately.
She was presiding over a case involving an illegal immigrant who had been identified as deportable and member of the TDA, the violent gang from Venezuela, that Venezuela unleashed on America as punishment and payback for the sanctions that the Biden administration was giving to the Venezuelan government related to its politics and policies. And so they're one of the most dangerous, violent. This was the gang that took over parts of Aurora, Colorado, took over parts, buildings in Texas and so forth, that got a lot of news and attention. Very violent, very dangerous, very extreme. So this was an individual that was facing state criminal charges, Wisconsin state criminal charges in the county of Milwaukee, for various forms of domestic abuse that he'd engaged in: battery, assault, threats to murder, et cetera, as bad as it gets. The victims were there that day and in protected custody before their testimony. The ICE got wind that he was going to be there, and so showed up to arrest him, which they are free to do as soon as he's in a court. He's in a public building like any place else. And the judge finds out, gets enraged, and tells the ICE people to go elsewhere. Now, this is while she's out in the hall. This is not part of her judicial duties. And then it tells the lawyer and his defense lawyer and him how to get out before ICE can arrest, facilitates and enables it. So she aids, abets illegal immigrant, concealing their location that she knew was subject to a deportation order that a federal official was there to enforce. So, and she did none of this from the bench. She did all of this outside of the bench. So she has no civil immunity, no criminal immunity for any of it. And he got away. And once they found out, they arrested her, which was the right move to make. It's something that honestly I would have done. I would have had these plans launched from the day I got into power. My argument with Bondi is these are things that should have already been afoot, because this was happening all over the place. That you have another judge in Wisconsin now saying she's going to refuse to hold court until illegal immigrants are protected in Wisconsin. I mean, this is how nuts these judges are. I mean, to be honest with you, had Republicans run a semi-competent campaign, this should have been one of the big issues in the Wisconsin Supreme Court race. It wasn't, because they were acting like it's still the 1980s, because your average Republican political consultant, that's where they live, the 1980s. It's like wag the dog where they think they won because you don't change horses in midstream. That's how dumb these people are. And so but this has been happening all over the place. The entire professional managerial class as a general class, is neck deep in this. Whether at the university academy level, like we now know, there's evidence that Harvard and other Ivy League institutions were deliberately violating the various sanctions on China to help illegally train China in ways to undermine America. And they were using taxpayer dollars to do it. And that's what this is systemic across the professional managerial class as a class. Then now, how do they get rich? They get rich sometimes very directly. Sometimes they're part of these foundations, or their family's part of these foundations. They're getting money. Sometimes they're like the New Mexico judge who's literally has them in their house, which raises questions what exactly he's really doing. And he went to the point of covering up evidence that this person had decapitated people. I mean, this is who they're putting in, right? This isn't the hardworking kid from South Mexico who's just trying to help get a little bit extra money back home to his parents so they can survive. That isn't who these people are. These are people literally cutting people's heads off. These are people beating up women. These are people assaulting women. These are people assaulting kids. These are people part of the most dangerous, violent gang, arguably in the history of the world. That's who these judges are defending. That's who these judges are protecting. That's how insane they have gone. And the reaction of the left was to, oh my goodness, how could it possible? We thought judges were above the law. We thought our bureaucrats were above the law. Only Republicans are not above the law, right? I mean, that's what they thought. What did they think was going to happen when you imprison, lock up, and completely deny basic core constitutional liberties to a bunch of people who just took an unauthorized tour of the Capitol? What do you think was going to happen when you bring not one, not two, not three, but four indictments against the president of the United States. Did you think there was going to be no blowback? Did you think there was going to be no consequences? It's incredible. I mean, all they're doing is arresting the most egregious bad faith actors right at the moment they're committing the crime. They need to be much broader, wider, and deeper. They should see, I think what surprised some of the conservative establishment types was to see how much MAGA Trump base cheered and celebrated the arrest of these judges. Loved seeing that, like the media thought, we're going to put this big photo of this judge in her judicial robes in handcuffs coming out of the courthouse, and the whole country will now be outraged. This is fascism. This is Hitler. She's just like Anne Frank. She's just like an innocent Jewish kid that they're about to send to the Holocaust. That's who this poor judge is, defending this poor little wife-beating, abusing, illegal immigrant member of a terrorist gang. And instead, MAGA base in the large part of the country cheered, celebrated it, welcomed it, loved it, shared it, because that's where judges are, because it's where they deserve to be, in a position of disgrace, in a position of disrepute, because they have decided to undermine constitutional liberty and the constitutional balance of powers, to usurp and overturn a presidential election in order to promote their idolatrous ideology. And so it is long overdue that we'll know that we're getting a real justice system when we start seeing the Bill Gateses and George Soros of the world walking, doing perp walks. When we see the Norm Eisens of the world, or the Mark Ellises of the world, one of the biggest criminal money launderers in American political history, by the way, Mark Elias, when they're walking, doing perp walks. Once they put Trump in a perp walk, and they did it 4 different times with a mugshot that went viral around the world, because people saw it for what it is, then all bets were off. And it's time that they only respect what they try to do to you. They only respect the use of power, just ruthlessly and directed at them. As Huey Long once said, I once tried to negotiate with him. Now I just break them up. Now I just crush them. Because you have no other choice if you're going to preserve constitutional liberty in this country, to make sure those that are the greatest threats to it face consequences for it.
It was, I can't find the meme right now, but I'm sure everybody's seen it. It's like they say history repeats, and it's an image of like Jews going off into train cars in 1939 and illegal immigrants going onto planes in 2025. And people reply like, so back in the day, they were shipping citizens out for extermination, and today they're shipping citizens back to their home country. And that's what people are comparing to the Holocaust. Bunch of asses and idiots. But so meanwhile,
by the way, many of the Jews wanted to escape to Israel, and the people and the Nazis were actually amenable to it initially. And the only reason it didn't happen was thanks to the Palestinian leader, who was a huge Nazi fan who wanted to see them all die. Just a little reminder for those that are still on the Palestinians are suffering a genocide side of the aisle.
When was it? When did the Brits bomb a boatload of immigrants going to Israel? I forget what, I thought that maybe have been 48.
There was all kinds of things. There were stopping of ships and all the rest. But yeah, it's absurd. I mean, this is the lawless, reckless, rogue behavior. And I mean, now, if you're on the political side of the equation, the timing probably couldn't be better, because you're wanting to highlight in the court of public opinion how crazy these federal judges are. I mean, even people like Professor Turley are calling them out for, it's an injunction by morning, an injunction at noon, an injunction at dinner time. They even, the Supreme Court even put in an injunction after midnight on a weekend. That's how nuts these judges have become, trying to overthrow the presidential election, because they're going to do everything possible to defend the current system. Much like you had, Tom Longo of Golden Guns pointed out, you had a lot of bad faith actors invested in globalism trying to sabotage the treasury markets, sabotage the equity markets, sabotage a wide range of markets in order to prevent President Trump from being able to have a restart away from globalism and return to the economy of our founders, which focused on taxation on external tariffs as taxation, not internal labor-based income taxes, chose low regulation domestically rather than encouraging people to locate offshore, and to restore America's working class. And of course, they waged all kinds of economic warfare against them with how they're treating bonds and stocks in different marketplaces, because they're going to defend the system that's made them rich, made them powerful. Same thing is true on illegal immigration. That the degree that people are in denial, the Democratic Party is deeply embedded and invested with illegal immigration in order to promote wages, in order to promote power. in order to decrease the wages of their competitors and make sure they have access, because where do they make their money? They otherwise make their money, aside from having direct involvement, like these fake Catholic charities that are taking money to help place illegal immigrants in the United States. And that's what this judge was connected to. And then a lot of them have family and friends. But their stock, well, why has the stock market gone up so much over the past quarter century? Because there's now a disconnect between the U.S. stock market and the wage growth of the average worker. The average worker's wage growth has gone way down. There's no connection. Stock market go up, wages are still going to go down. So where is their wealth? Their wealth is tied to assets. It's tied to homes, to real estate, insurance, and equity markets. And so consequently, they profit from a system that brings in mass amount of illegal immigration that can substantially and radically reduce wage cost in America, which in turn hurts badly America's working class, but enriches them. These are the people that provide their extra nanny services, their landscaping services, etc. They profit from illegal immigration, and they get their political power from it. Like, people thought you had to have illegals voting in order for that to happen. No, you don't.
Well, I think most people appreciate now that they affect the census. They affect seats. What do they call them? Congressional seats.
And why do they affect the census? Because the Supreme Court of the United States prohibited President Trump from requiring citizenship as part of the census process.
Make that make sense for an idiot Canadian. Like, would the census include anybody who's here in America? It doesn't include vacationers, travelers.
You couldn't limit. So basically, illegals were counted to be apportioned. Illegals are guaranteed representation under the Supreme Court's rules.
But so, like, while we're on that level of idiocy, why wouldn't they also include temporary travelers? Why wouldn't they include vacationers and people who are here to visit national parks?
The way the Census Bureau decided to do it was to highlight illegals, because that would give them the biggest boost for Democratic realignment. I mean, it's really that political and that simple. And the court, when Trump caught it and tried to stop it, the Supreme Court stepped in and wouldn't let him.
And so
I'm sure Chief Justice, people like Chief Justice Roberts, you could probably do a little review of, say, 2 years of his personal income statement and expenses. You'll find he's hired illegals himself. I almost guarantee it. That's who they are.
Well, now you mentioned it. That is what the judge, at the very least, was doing in New Mexico. They were hiring illegals to do cheap housework and then keeping them in the guest house that they had so they could exploit them. I feel like,
and in order to prevent them, they were harboring them, sheltering them, preventing their detection, and destroying evidence and obstructing interviews. That's what these judges were doing. They were committing literally every crime you can possibly commit.
It's as treasonous as it can possibly get, I think, in the truest of sense.
Oh yeah, it's seditious at a fundamental level.
Well, no, because you said everyone says
easy crime. You can't. For another federal judge, several of these I've been in front of. Orrick I've been in front of. He's a corrupt hack from a long, corrupt corporate neoliberal aristocracy.
Or for those who don't know, Orrick is the one who just issued the injunctive order that prohibits or that enjoins Trump from withholding federal funds from the sanctuary city.
From the cities that are facilitating illegal immigration, harboring and sheltering illegal immigration. I mean, this is systemic. Like, people are just now discovering how systemic it was. They were laundering taxpayer dollars to these democratically aligned constituencies, including to illegals. They were giving them Social Security numbers and then giving them Social Security checks. They were giving them Social Security numbers so they could get Medicare, so they could get Medicaid, all illegally. They were often flying them into the country, paying for their tickets, paying for their housing even. They were subsidizing their housing at a massive level. And what happens is it goes into the local population for reapportionment purposes. So when you apportion house, right now, Republicans would have a massive edge in the House if we simply limited apportionment to being being represented. In other words, actual citizens. If we limit apportionment to citizens, there would be about 27 more Republicans in the House than there are currently. That's why they're doing what they're doing. This is a power grab. It's what George Soros has been about all along. And there's always money connected to it as well. And they're just finally getting exposed. So credit to Bondi for making sure it went through and defending it publicly. But they should have been doing this from the outset. The American people are just beginning to discover the degree to which the greatest traitors of constitutional liberty in our country are those who wear black robes on the bench themselves.
It is wild. Do we need to go into further detail about Judge Orrick, the one who has now?
They're all a bunch of corrupt.
Well, one question I do have. I'm going to bring this one up here. This is the case. Here we go again. When I was going over the judge's decision, I'm like, this is what like a 14-year-old scorned child writes like. It does seem, however, like it was very much the same type of injunctive relief that was requested back in 2017. Why have none of these cases been adjudicated on the merits as to whether or not the president can withhold federal funds from sanctuary cities? Why hasn't this been determined on the merits yet?
I mean, it really should have been, but the what it is the Supreme Court has dodged it, and the other courts have been complicit in covering it up in different ways. And so the aspect of sanctuary city policy they can get away with is the federal government can't, what's called the anti-commandeering doctrine, they can't force the state and local governments to be their agents. That's true. That's very different, though, than what they're now doing. They're now doing act like these judges, which is going past. It's one thing to say, we're not going to use our resources to help you. It's quite another to say, we're going to use our resources to impair you. We're going to use our resources to impede you. And that's what they're doing. They're doing things like, AOC is complicit in this. She's giving false advice to illegals.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think AOC has been involved in criminal behavior. She's out there telling them things that are actually wrong statements of law and telling them ways to evade detection. I mean, that's what she's doing. And and she's giving it directly to them. When you're there, see, that's no longer command. It's one thing to say, here's what your rights are. You can request a habeas petition. You can go through an immigration appeal in certain cases, et cetera. That's fine. But she's going past that. She's telling them, here's a roadmap as to how I, as a member of Congress, can help you evade detection. That's now harboring and sheltering and aiding and abetting criminally an illegal immigrant. And she's doing it for the most dangerous people out there, these gang members who are committing crimes here in the United States. So it's the least sympathetic. Like one of the fake news stories they tried to circulate this week. I know because I have lefty friends and family who will send me this crap on a regular basis. It's amazing. I've never seen anybody take the bait more on clickbait liberal nonsense than liberals. They will just repeat things as if they're absolutely true when it would take like 5 seconds of research to know it's not. But one of the latest ones was Donald Trump is taking a 2-year-old little toddler, U.S. citizen, and shipping him off to an El Salvadoran prison. Okay, it's all false at every level. The 2-year-old's mother is here illegally, has been ordered deported. Her 2-year-old has not been ordered deported, is legally present in the United States as long as birthright citizenship remains the law of the land, which we'll find out whether the Supreme Court later in the year, whether it becomes one. But what is the mother demanded that the government bring the 2-year-old to her pending her deportation at the hotel she was at, not a prison. And then if she is ultimately honors the deportation, she wants the 2-year-old to go with her, which is very reasonable. There was no order of a deportation of a 2-year-old. Fake article, fake news from the New York Times. But that's what these people do. They're so used to lying. It's like the cover up and the lying and the deception and the lying to themselves about what the consequences. Like, what's amazing is who thought you could help an illegal immigrant, somebody that literally a fugitive at that point, a fugitive who you as a judge know has been ordered arrested, and you use your power as a judge to hide them and help them escape. That's not only a crime of its own accord, aiding and abetting illegal immigration, harboring and sheltering, using deception to hide the location of an illegal alien, but it's using your power as a state judge under color of law to do it. So it makes it an even more egregious crime. It makes it a federal civil rights crime, in my view. But you see a sense of the insanity by what was, to me, the most insane thought I'd heard. It came from even a family member of mine, a lefty family member who buys every little nonsense that exists on the planet. I even had to mute them on social media because they were busy spending like every day coming up with the latest media libel, and they would repeat it about Robert Kennedy. But the one that shocked me was the new left's excuse to attack Robert Kennedy says, let's get to the bottom of autism so that we can reduce the amount of autism in the country. And particularly, he highlighted severe autism and how damaging it is to people. So traditional historical autism, if you go back to the diagnosis over a century, was for people who are severely autistic. Over the last half decade, in order to normalize autism, they've been expanding and expanding and expanding the definition so it includes Asperger's, so it includes high-functioning autists, people that would not even have been diagnosed autism 20 years ago, right? And they're doing this because someone, it was a member of our board, emailed me, sent this to me, and they're like, "Here's what they're doing." Because it was someone that's neck deep, into the autism legal space. They said their goal is to normalize autism so that you can't collect any damages for anybody that's autistic. Say that's not harm. That's a good. It's great that that at 25 years old you can't function, can't leave your home. This is the severe autism cases. Often have to wear a diaper, bang your head against the wall. I mean, no one would want this for people. And yet that's their new excuse. Their new excuse is to normalize it so that if big drug companies are causing autism, you should send them a thank you note and a bonus for it. If big food companies are causing it, send them a thank you note. If big toxic polluters are doing it, send them a thank you note. That's how they want. It's one thing to try to normalize pedos and trans and that whole insanity. They're now trying to normalize autism so that you will feel guilty and bad for saying it's not a good thing that autism is skyrocketing in America.
I won't play the entire video of RFK. It's 50 seconds, but
this is an individual tragedy as well. Autism destroys families. More importantly, it destroys our greatest resource, which are our children.
And we don't. He says how they, some 25% don't go on to pay taxes, whatever. To which Gwen Walls,
1 in 4 are totally non-fun. But I know of nobody who really believes autism is a good thing. Autism is a desirable thing.
I got to read Gwen Walls' virtue signaling of a response. It's deeply upsetting, especially coming from our nation's highest-ranking health official. Individuals with autism are family, neighbors, students, and coworkers, and they contribute more to this nation than this man. What a dumb, bitchy thing to say.
Insane statements. It's trying to normalize it. To look, every parent I know that has autistic kids loves their kid, absolutely. Same with kids that have Down syndrome or other disabilities. They love their kid. There's no doubt about that. But they're now trying to guilt them into thinking, oh no, if you think it was a bad thing that your child has this limitation on life, it's because you don't understand that that's not a limitation but an enhancement. So if that's why I was saying, get your leg cut off, send a thank you gift to the person who did it, because now you get to now your arms are going to be stronger. Somebody causes you blindness in an industrial accident, send him a thank you card, because then now your hearing is going to be improved. This is insanity. Insanity by lunatics trying to apologize and excuse the big drug companies, the big food companies, and the big chemical polluters that have led to the rise of autism in this country. And particularly severe dysfunctional autism, but also includes a wide range of other people. I don't know of anybody who sanely would say, name a parent who would say, oh, if they came to me tomorrow and they had a pill and my child could not be autistic, does anybody think that 99% of them wouldn't take the pill? I mean, it's ridiculous. It's trying to normalize this and then morally shame people for saying it's not a good thing to disable so many kids. You lying, phony, fake frauds. Quit doing it because you were complicit in it, because you enabled it, because you facilitated it. Well, now responsibility is coming, and you're not going to get out of it by trying to guilt us into feeling bad for pointing out an epidemic is an epidemic.
No, it's one step removed from, and it will get there. Well, let's say the vaccine injured are productive members of society.
That's exactly where it's going.
And how dare you?
And if you think you suffered an injury, that's your mental and moral deficit. And then they get on their moral self-righteousness about it. These bunch of phony frauds. Oh my goodness. It is outrageous what they are doing. Outrageous. But they will go to any lengths to cover up for their criminality and how much harm they have visited upon so many people. Just like right now, they're on a excuse-making tour using Claire Lehman, that fraud from Australia, who weaseled her way into her position of fake conservative influence, was pushing out an article saying that everything that happened during COVID was great. It was really good. I mean, the autism gaslighting is the most egregious I've seen in a while. But it parallels the gaslighting that says, oh no, in fact, the interventions were good, the lockdowns were good, shutting down schools was good, taking away your freedoms was good, rushing a fake vaccine as it wasn't even a vaccine was good. That's the kind of, they're so used to just lying themselves. And that's why I say it's an Orwellian world. We've gone full Orwell. that, in the name of the rule of law, they undermine the rule of law. In the name of democracy, they undermine democracy. In the name of the Constitution, they try to kill the Constitution. That's what they're doing. And this is just the latest representation and expression of it.
Robert, people in the chat were saying they wanted a Matt Gaetz, and they ended up with a Pam Bondi. And then I was going to say, I was on with Matt Gaetz on Friday night talking about what might happen with the Canadian election. I don't want to give your good stuff away for free. Let me just ask one.
What do you think? Are you hopeful or despairing?
Well, I'm despairing because I'm despairing, but at the very least, the market for a majority Liberal government is falling rapidly, but still at 58%. I mean, if I had to say that there's one safe bet, and you'll tell me what you think of this, betting no on a Liberal majority seems to be obviously the surest of the bets.
And that's the other thing with the other point I think you highlighted that I think is being underappreciated by a lot of the political commentators is if there isn't a Liberal majority, there is a very good chance there's no Liberal government, because that I've seen almost no commentary on this, because I was curious. I was like, how much are the Canadian commentariat and others that are following the Canadian election? How many of them are pointing out that if Liberals fail to get a majority and the NDP is dropping like a rock, that they need the Quebec bloc to give them a majority? I've seen almost no discussion of this.
Well, I don't
tells
trust
me it must not be locked in that the Quebec bloc is going to go with the Liberal. Why not form? They would probably have. It would practically make more sense for what they want to achieve to line up with the Conservatives.
Well, for sure. The only thing is, and I don't trust the polls or for a lick, but they're predicting that the bloc is going to drop in Quebec, and they're going to go from how many seats do they have now? I forget how many seats, but then they're going to lose the seats, the bloc.
They're going to lose, but they'll still have, if the Liberals don't get a majority and NDP drops as bad as it drops, it's going to be up to the Quebec bloc. Quebec bloc will control who gets the majority.
Well, the theorizing is that if the NDP don't vote NDP, they're going to vote Liberal. If the bloc doesn't vote bloc, do they vote Liberal? I mean, Quebec typically goes Liberal regardless, but look, the bottom line, if it's a majority Liberal government, Canada is thoroughly fooked. It's the only question is whether or not, even if there's a Conservative minority, can Canada be saved? It's looking like a Conservative majority is, according to the markets, very, very unlikely, but maybe a good long shot bet.
Yeah, well, yeah. There's polling data that's been that I've seen that shows it may be dead even. Like the Liberal majority assumes that the Liberals win by 3 points or more. And if they don't, they don't have a majority. And if the NDP drops, like people suggest, the most likely majority would be a Conservative Quebec bloc majority.
Yep. And
that's not even being discussed. They don't even, again, maybe the commie does gone full commie, and maybe that's what the Liberal majority will walk in like all the experts have been predicting now for 2 months. But if they're wrong, I think there could be a real surprise Monday night. Now, the amazing thing is, now in Canada, how do they conduct their elections there in Canada?
It is paper ballots with pencil, which some people are finding controversial, but it's always been pencil. You can use a pen, and it's 2 pieces of ID. And there's a very third option that if you don't have any ID, you can get someone to vouch for you at the location. Who has to be?
How funny! They tell us we can't do here in America.
Well, because apparently
our paper ballots, you can just it doesn't have to be through mail, doesn't have to be through machines. You actually have to have ID. You can't not. So somehow Canadians are capable of this. Is it the case that you will actually know the election results on the night of the election?
Typically, they try to normalize that in terms of like, you may not know for a little while, but no, typically they are the night of. In 2021, I remember that I didn't get. I'm joking that I didn't win my riding the night of. No, typically it's the night of, but it's an amazing thing,
Is that what killed your optimism for Canada, was going through that election?
No, what killed my optimism for Canada is 4 years later, the mere idea that people would vote Liberal. They have to be retarded. There's no other way to say it, and I apologize. Politically retarded, because it's quite literally moving backwards or just not learning from your freaking mistakes. Go vote for the Liberals again. I mean, it hasn't gotten bad enough yet for Canadians because they hate Trump more than they love their own country.
Well, it's amazing. Federal elections in America require that non-citizens not participate. So President Trump said, well, maybe we should put on our voter registration form, are you a citizen? But according to federal judges, you can't do that either. In front of another common judge I've been in front of, they're refusing to allow the president to faithfully execute the law. Why would they be so concerned about that? Unless they want non-citizens voting.
Robert, let me catch up to a bunch of the chats because I'm falling very far behind. We're going to get all of the rumble rants. I mean, Jews, Louise, locals. Cultivated Mind says, we finally just convinced my wife's brother to stop giving his baby Cheerios and processed grain snacks. Maha. Forced Name Change says, I'll make you a bet, Robert. Here's my $10. I think election shenanigans will lead to a liberal government. Keep in mind, Castro won first election with only 5 votes from eligible Canucks. Pinochet's helicopter tours says, fine, Santos sentencing now sets the standard for every Democrat that took from Act Blue. That is what's going to happen if they want. No reason not to get into Act Blue.
Yeah, and I'm glad that they're doing something on Act Blue. I just don't understand why this wasn't done right out of the gate. What I've seen now, I've seen enough of Bondi to realize other people have to make sure that she does her job because she won't do it on her own accord.
And then the Alt Scown says, Viva, can't Trump appoint lawyers for 130 to 180 days at a time, like Barnes as acting assistant? Those were non-governmental employees or special employees. Elon was one of them.
And maybe that route needs to be looked at because given the limitations, what we've seen so far from the Justice Department.
King of Biltong in the house says, now available U.S. Wagyu Piri Piri Biltong. Great Wagyu flavor, mild heat, 50% protein, packed with B12, creatine, iron, zinc, much more. Go to BiltongUSA.com, code BARNES.
I ate a bag of those the other day. They were really good.
It's flipping delicious stuff.
Better than beef jerky.
Barb Loves Alaska says, Barnes and Viva, if you haven't watched Glenn Beck's interview with Harmeet Dillon on Friday, 25th, 36 minutes, great interview. I'm going to go all
I still have very high hopes for Harmeet Dillon at the Civil Rights Division.
Retard is a great word, says Harry Toe, too. Randy Edwards says, Commodore Vanderbilt funded the Civil War to get rid of his competition so that he could realize his goal of opening California as a low-wage, right-to-work state fueled by cheap South American labor. And this is exactly what my tweet was about, forced name change. All right.
Yeah, well, speaking of the insanity, forced name changes of the like, the Supreme Court is dealing with religion in schools this week in 2 different cases.
You want to field those, and I'll pretend to know what you're talking about.
Sure. So the first one is in Montgomery County, Maryland. The school district requires little kids, elementary school kids, in other words, 6, 5, 6, 7-year-old kids, be read books that celebrate pride parades, that have same-sex romances on the playground, that celebrates gender transitioning to 6-year-olds, 5-year-olds. So some parents had religious objections to this being read to their children and asked to opt out. And the school district has said, nah, too many people are going to opt out, so you can't even opt out. And they're even shaming little 5 or 6 or 7-year-olds that raised questions about what they're being forced to read. This is education. This is indoctrination disguised as education.
Robert, I will not name anybody who could be identified, but immediate circles up in Canada with the exact same problem. They had Two-Spirit people, like Tran natives, come in and talk about their experiences. And I'm going to see if I can find the name of the trans 2S LGBTQI, whatever. It's beyond indoctrination. It's child grooming. And like I said at the beginning of the show, anybody talking pronouns with a kid who is not their own is a effing pervert who deserves to be on a watch list. So what is the case now before the SCOTUS?
So the issue was, do you have a religious right under the First Amendment in public schools to opt out? Like they weren't even trying to change the curriculum. Montgomery County, by the way, has the highest per capita rate outside of D.C. itself, because it's a suburb of D.C., of high-ranking federal government bureaucrats. So this should tell you where these people are. This is how they're all aligned. That they all have a radical ideology that they're trying to force on the rest of us as part of the power grab they were afforded to go along with globalism writ large. And it's insane that we're even here. But multiple federal courts have been ruling over the past 5 years, a little bit under the radar, outside of religious rights folks, to paying attention to it. They've been saying public schools are exempt from all this, that public schools can force religion upon you as long as it's not called religion, against your actual religious beliefs, and it's part of their internal curriculum decisions that has nothing to do with religious rights. It's like, what? So The most famous case in this context is, once again, from the Amish community. So the Yoder case, Wisconsin versus Yoder. The Amish, Amos Miller, you can find the photo of his grandfather being arrested back in the 1950s in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, where, by the way, the state of Pennsylvania is still harassing him to this day. He and his wife's depositions are scheduled for a couple of weeks ago. I mean, that's how insane the state continues to march against him. And partially because of his grandfather's noble stand that he took his noble stand. But went to the Supreme Court, and what was happening is the state was trying to force Amish parents to send their Amish kids to public schools. And they were like, we oppose this. And it was the U.S. Supreme Court that said the right of their religious expression and affiliation and protection means that the state cannot force their kids into public education, has to allow them to homeschool their children. And if they limit that homeschooling to the 8th grade, so be it. That is also consistent with their religious beliefs, and to try to force otherwise violates their First Amendment rights. So based on the Yoder case, many of these religious parents, 80% of kids go to public schools in America. Most parents cannot afford private or parochial school education. And to this day, the state has done everything possible to prevent any form of state aid to religious schools. Now, the Supreme Court, just a couple of years ago, in a case we talked about, Maine, they were saying you can't give scholarships or vouchers to religious schools. Supreme Court said that violates the First Amendment rights of those parents. You're burdening religion. You're targeting religion for burdening by the state. That is a violation. It's never been a separation of church and state like people have suggested. It's been that the state doesn't promote religion at the expense of another, and the state doesn't suppress religious expression or oppress religious affiliation. That's not a wall between the church and the state. That's a made-up left doctrine that is not reflected in the Constitution or the history of the founding generation that wrote and authorized that Constitution and the Bill of Rights attended there too. So when you look at all of that, what you end up with is that these parents should be able to opt out of this religious indoctrination disguised as public school education. And yet the liberal judges are clearly all on board with it. They're on board with 5-year-olds being read books about gender transitioning, about same-sex romance, they're giving sex ed books to 5-year-olds, and they're forcing them to read it. If they raise any question, they're publicly shamed in front of the class for it. And if the parent tries to opt out, they're told they have to leave the school. In fact, Justice Jackson, to give you an idea of how the black professional managerial class is so completely disconnected from the black working class, which, by the way, is foreign to that tradition. The black professional class, because of segregation, grew up deeply embedded within the black working class. That's why people like Martin Luther King were deeply connected to the interests and issues of the black working class. That's why he transitioned into economic issues. That's why he transitioned into opposing war, because disproportionately black working class men were dying in those wars. Today's black professional managerial class, this was the real point of diversity, equity, and inclusion. I said at the beginning, said if you want to get rid of what happens, and Nat Turner led one of the greatest slave rebellions in the history of America along the Tidewater region of Virginia. He was aided, by the way, in North Carolina, the outer tide, that region. He was aided, by the way, by a bunch of local radical white working class fishermen in that effort, by the way, because they oppose slavery themselves. I've always said, how do you solve the Nat Turner problem? You just give Nat Turner a scholarship to Harvard. Then Nat Turner ain't going to be raising no slave rebellion. He's going to be owning the slaves like so many free blacks did in Charleston, South Carolina in 1860. In fact, he was more likely a freed slave, formerly freed slave, or free black, as it was then labeled, would own slavery than whether a white person in Charleston owned slavery. Right? You have to inculpate, you have to get them involved in the corruption of the system. You got to do things that implicate themselves in the process. That's what DEI was always about. Divorce the black professional managerial class from the interest of the black working class. And that's how you have a judge like Justice Jackson speaking up on the Supreme Court saying, well, they can just go to a different school. And it's like, what are you talking about? There is no public school choice in Montgomery County, Maryland. There is no school. You're zoned, and that's where you go. And so she appeared to be unaware of this, because that's what happens when you're more aligned with the professional managerial class, whatever race or religion, than you are the working class or people of your own ethnic identification or national ancestry. And so that's what's really happening. Now, fortunately, this is where it's useful to have Catholics on the court. I'm not always fond of, why do we have to have all Catholics and no Protestants? Because that's basically what it is. To all my Catholic friends, it's just I trust the Protestant tradition. Hey, I'm, my namesake, the Reverend Robert Barnes, was one of the 55 people hung in the Tower of London because he objected to various church impositions and kingly not inquisitions, but kingly crimes, if you will. Covering that tradition. But here, parochial education is a big focus of the Catholic Church, always has been. And in this context, you have Alito, Kavanaugh, Thomas, very sensitive to it. And I think they will step into the breach. And I think even Gorsuch, who leans libertarian, Barrett comes from the same Catholic tradition. So I think that will be enough. Roberts has those ties, that they will finally say public schools are not exempt from the First Amendment to the United States, as they've practically been interpreting it in this context for the last decade. And that, yes, you as a parent have a right to opt out of this religious indoctrination disguised as public education.
Yeah, but it's an illusory sort of option in any event, because you opt out. On the one hand, you're going to piss off all the teachers who are going to treat you differently. You're going to be known as the bigot to the rest of the school. And you'll
By the way, what's interesting about this, Montgomery County required the teachers to do it. So this wasn't teacher choice. So if a teacher didn't like the materials, they were fired if they didn't read it to their children. This is how insane these people are. They got to be purged. There's no other choice from positions of power.
Well, no, but
somebody misconstrues what I mean.
No, the question is, how do you go about doing it? Because they've thoroughly.
Part of it is the ones that are criminal, lock up. The ones that are committing civil violations, bring civil. There should be civil actions brought to pursue them. Now, in that regard, we have another way that the system has been trying to attack all this, which is in Oklahoma. Charter schools that have allowed charter schools since 1999, a Catholic school is offering virtual schooling education, virtuing opportunities to everybody all across the country, including Oklahoma, and using the Oklahoma schools charter system to get so. And there, if you pick the charter school, the state pays for the cost of the child's education. I have long favored every form of school choice. I have never been in favor of a state monopoly on education. It's always been disguised indoctrination. The only question is, what ideas are they trying to indoctrinate? At the turn of the century, it was to indoctrinate immigrants into becoming factory workers. That's what it was. I mean, does anybody ever wonder, why do we have a rigorous time schedule for our schools? Right? Why is it 9 to 9:45 is this class, 9:50 to 10?
Yeah, I make a joke. It's like prison, but yeah, it's to get you used to a punch card type lifestyle. Here's your 15 minutes for lunch. Here's your recess, and now get used to suffering for the remaining 2 hours and do what the boss tells you.
It's one of the reasons why I shared the photo a few years of me when I was a little kid. It was like me when I was 5 years old, and then all the kids are like happy and whatever, and I'm just looking with a deep skeptical eye at the teacher. Because I said, I wanted to do a version of Robert Fulgham's book, Everything I Need to Learn, I Learned in Kindergarten. He writes it as this sappy, sweet little thing. And I'm like, yeah, I did too. My loving caregiver drops me off at a random place I've never been before. I'm only 5 years old. And all of a sudden I have this random authority figure, who I have no idea who this person is, telling me when I can go to the bathroom, when I can eat, when I can talk, when I can move around, when I can. And if I object to anything this random authority figure directs me to do, they first deprive me of pleasure. No recess for you. No fruit punch and cookies for you, Bobby. No socialization for you. And then they would escalate to pain, social shaming. You have to go sit in the corner. Or when I was a kid, they whooped you. The physical imposition of pain. It's like, yeah, I learned everything I needed to learn about kindergarten or about the government in kindergarten as a 5-year-old. Don't do what some random authority figure directs you to do, no matter how irrational or insane, or you get stuck in the corner, you get stuck with no benefits, you get stuck suffering pain. And now we've got to the point where so it's always been indoctrination. It's always been problematic in my view, but now they've just taken it to the extreme. They're usurping public education away from reading and arithmetic, as it used to be called, the 3 R's in certain parts of Tennessee. And now they're making it all indoctrination, pure indoctrination, about nothing but indoctrination, about things that offend and shock most Americans. And what they're doing is losing respect for public education, which to me is all good. because we need to have fewer state-sponsored, state monopoly of public schools, less state use and usurpation of public taxpayer dollars for idolatrous agendas that are against the values and interest of the American people. In that capacity, but in Oklahoma, they prohibit any money to religious schools. Maybe Oklahoma, why would they do that? This is because of the other reason for these laws. They came about between 1850 and 1920 in order for conservative Protestant communities who hated Catholics. And so they basically said no public aid to any religious school in order to prevent Catholic schools from getting money. It's always been unconstitutional what they were doing. But now it's going to reach the U.S. Supreme Court.
Well, very quickly, to someone who doesn't know better, what is the fundamental difference between Catholics and Protestants, religious-wise?
Oh, so I mean, the Catholics, it's kind of like the Sunni-Shia divide. So it's the degree to which you believe intermediaries are necessary or not. So if you're a Catholic, you believe the Pope is God's emissary on the earth. And so the Protestants would say anything that intermediates between you and God interferes and interrupts your relationship with God, and that you have no need for priests or popes to talk directly to God. And so it's anti-institutional. So like where this shows up in law might surprise people. What I've always tried to tell people, that people connected to the Catholic intelligentsia when it comes to law are going to be institutionalists. They're very unlikely to be libertarian. They're very unlikely to be populist. They might have populist sympathies like Clarence Thomas does, but it's unlikely they'll be full-blown populists because they believe in institutions. They believe in respect for institutionalism. And that's just not who the Protestants were. Protestants were just deeply anti-intellectualism of that class, anti a professional managerial class running things. You have as much right to speak about God, access God, teach God, learn about God, or anything else as anybody else in the Protestant tradition. Now, probably, I had that question myself when I was 16. I was a friend of mine. She was driving the car, and she was Catholic, and she explained, "Oh, I'm Catholic," and I was like, "Is that the same thing as Christian?"
Well, but this is
she laughed so hard she almost pulled the car totally off the side of the road. That's how Protestant I grew up. It's like, I'm not sure the Catholics are. Everybody knew the Pope inside his hat had a little 666 symbol. So that's how. I mean, I grew up in old school where we haven't given up the anti-Catholic rivalry from 7 centuries ago. We still got bitter grievances from when great granddaddy got killed by some priest someplace. The core of it is that tradition.
Because I know
how much you think you need the Pope or not, but I would say culturally, how much are you respectful of and deferential to institutions, or how much you're an individualist? Because Protestantism is very individual driven in terms of where the power relationship should exist in religion, whereas Catholicism is more institutional than Protestantism.
Oh, very interesting. I'm going to bring this up because we got MSC8503, who I believe is now a member of our vivabarneslaw.locals.com community. It says it comes up as a $100 donation, but I think that's an annual membership. So welcome to the channel.
Thank you very much. That's fantastic. vivabarneslaw.locals.com, where I gave a free legal masterclass on what due process is entitled to illegals. To briefly summarize, due process does not mean the same thing for everybody. Due process the process that you are due under the Constitution varies depending on what property or liberty interest you have that can be legally recognized. So people think, well, don't you always have a property interest in being where you're at? Not if you're there illegally. Don't you have a liberty interest in being where you're at? Not if you're there illegally. So when you are there illegally, you have no constitutionally recognizable property or liberty interest that requires any process at all beyond what Congress gives you and the president affords you. And what the courts have ruled for a century, until just this past 2 weeks, was that the president had carte blanche, and there was, quote, no role for judicial intervention, even in habeas petitions in such cases, beyond just rubber stamping whether the executive gave you any due process. They said there was often no judicial role at all, is what the Supreme Court said repeatedly between the 1870s and the 1960s. And that has been undisturbed law until now.
Well, the absurdity, or at least the clearest example of which that due process doesn't mean as thorough due process for naturalized citizens, born citizens, and other constitutional rights for others. Well, doesn't the student on a visa have unfettered freedom of speech rights? They don't have Second Amendment rights, which is in the Constitution. And so the idea that you don't get all constitutional rights depending on your status here, certainly illegal status. And I like my analogy is like, you don't get to come in and steal constitutional rights illegally. There's a legal way through which to get them.
In fact, it's also the same, like you're saying as a popular meme. If you didn't use due process coming in, you don't get due process going out. Well, actually, that's recognized in the law. The law recognizes what's called exhaustion of remedies. If you don't go through the proper administrative process, you can't sue the government, even if they violated your rights, because you didn't go through the proper process. That's what these illegals have done. They've failed to go through the proper process. And so they're not entitled to any process on their way out the door, except for what courts are now just making up and inventing. And that's what they need to correct. But speaking of constitutional rights about what's protected and what's not protected, the janitor suit against Columbia University gives a little bit of a roadmap for dealing with illegal immigration and for the Harmeet Dillon at the Justice Department and the Civil Rights Division to start ending the lawfare engaged in by NGOs and rogue local judges, rogue local prosecutors, rogue local politicians across the board.
Damn it, I had the article up here somewhere, but forget about it. I'll do the factual pattern and you'll get into the legal stuff, because it at the very least undermines the argument that these campus protests were purely peaceful. There was no harassment. This is there's kidnapping and unlawful confinement. And the janitors on which camp was it, Columbia or was it Harvard?
Yeah,
Columbia. They were alleging, they're claiming that they were basically trapped on the premises by violent, harassing protesters who were calling them, these are not Jewish janitors.
Yeah, they were.
They
were called
harbors.
Jewish, though. They were called Jews.
Well, because Robert, you don't
have
have to be a Jew to be Jewish, but they were called Jew harborers, protecting. So they were literally harassed, confined.
And they were just janitors trying to clean the building.
And so it shed some. It definitely shed some light on the fact that these were not Ottawa trucker protests, peaceful, peace and love type protests. But the legal side of it, Robert, what is noteworthy on the legal side of the janitors' claims?
So the janitors have sued everybody involved, and this is a good reminder, including have invoked the Civil Rights Act of 1871. So this should help give people a roadmap over the Justice Department, for example, or others, about where legal remedy can be taken. So the Civil Rights Act of 1771 is colloquially called the Ku Klux Klan Act. And that's because the target was the Klan. Now notice who the Klan is. Private actors. May be complicit with public actors, but this is a total private group. And they created a law that allows you to sue private actors when your civil rights are being violated. Now let's look at what that is. If you under color of law, deny any right, privilege, immunity, or protection of the Constitution, you can be sued. In addition, even if this coverage includes any person who does so under color of law or does so as a custom and usage of the state, and that causes any kind of deprivation of any form of constitutional liberty, and it applies to private actors if they simply conspire to cause injury, including if the injury is purely for advocacy. And so think about that. What they did to Tina Peters, I believe, is the local politicians violating her civil rights and conspiring to violate her civil rights. What they did to Kurt Benschoof was state prosecutors, state judges, state politicians conspire to deprive him of his federally protected constitutional rights. Look at all these gun control laws being passed. These are local and state actors violating your Second Amendment rights and conspiring to do so, often with the aid of people like Bloomberg. Like, what kind of case does this give you the roadmap for? It gives you the roadmap for, say, suing George Soros over an illegal immigrant causing harm in the community because he helped facilitate and promote it, and all the local politicians who helped achieve it in the first place. It is a green light to sue Bloomberg, local governments, county and state officials for violation of your Second Amendment rights, because the number one organizer and orchestrator of it is Bloomberg himself, the billionaire. So there's all these private actors, NGOs, Bill Gates. Overall, everything Bill Gates has done related to COVID. To me, there's a potential roadmap to suing Bill Gates, Anthony Fauci, and others for systematically depriving people of their civil rights and civil liberties by attempting to coerce the vaccine mandate against their religious objections without accommodation being met, amongst other violations of your civil rights and civil liberties. So look through and think about, where have my civil rights or civil liberties been violated? Who is it that's violating them? And this case says you have a legal roadmap for suing that person and that group of people together. And it's, the utility of this is, you screw around with some Jewish lawyers, and they always come up with some good roadmap to figure out how to get back at you.
Sneaky Robert.
People use it as a roadmap to go after anybody that's
if you like what they're doing, it's good law, and if you don't like what the Jewish lawyers are doing, it's sneaky, underhanded tactics.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That's always the language. But I think the utility of this case is it gives a roadmap for how to deal with this. Because think about it, how is this indistinguishable from what Antifa did and the people connected to Antifa? How about the people, like, I'm looking at bringing these kind of cases on behalf of the people like Owen Schroyer, who got swatted because they got swatted because of a complicity between the Austin City Police Department, NGOs, and bad actors to conspire to deprive someone of their civil rights and civil liberties. In this case, they wanted to punish him for his advocacy. I think that's an 1871 violation. And again, Civil Rights Act of 1871 being the reference. Now, 42 USC 1983 has mostly replaced a lot of these provisions, but not all of them. And this lawsuit is a reminder of its utility. The left gave this roadmap where they went after Trump related to January 6th. I was like, okay, if judges are going to now recognize that as a legal theory, fine. The people that have been abusing it the most is the left. The left is the one doing this systematically, organizing and orchestrating protesters or other such activity. The Tesla activity. Seems to me you can go after not only the individuals who did it, but like state prosecutors in Minneapolis who are refusing to meaningfully prosecute people who are caught doing it when they're actually involved state government officials. Why not combine them with with all the NGOs that are sponsoring and promoting and pushing this? So I think there's ways to go after them systematically, and the janitor's lawsuit against Columbia University gives you that roadmap.
Why didn't Riley Gaines, the fact pattern is very similar. Why didn't Riley Gaines, or did she, sue the university for when she was basically unlawfully confined in that room while they were joking about, negotiating her
I think she could have. I mean, I don't know whether she did or she didn't, but I think all of this is a roadmap. The left in its eagerness to go after the right. The various pro-Israeli groups in order to prevent and preclude this from reoccurring to them. Well, the same thing has happened to people all across the country. The BLM protest, the anti-Trump protest, the NGOs facilitating illegal immigration in the country, the NGOs facilitating all the horrendous COVID policies in the country. They're that cause so much injury all the way across the board. I think this is a way to go at them. I think I've long believed this, but I was like, this suit just kind of gave it the easiest, cleanest legal roadmap. And there'll be a lot of pressure on the judges to allow the suit to go forward. So you'll then have the legal precedent that you can utilize for these other cases to be brought in other jurisdictions.
Let me bring up, I want to bring up some of the chat, CommieTube chats. I love the long format show. Where did Rob buy his hat? Says JC NorCal.
This, I believe, was a gift.
And by the way, I think I remember this. I want to get this dog. We got Cheryl Gage. He says, sorry, Viva. This is Cheryl's husband. Cheryl had a stroke last month, so she can't comment. She will recover soon, we hope. Until then, you and Robert keep up the good fight. And I said, we'll be praying for a speedy recovery.
Absolutely.
Blobfish catching strays from Viva. Okay, here we go. No, I don't think
that's funny.
Sure. I still
that is the way they interpret it. That evil Viva was attacking the poor blobfish.
I know.
That horrible judge from Wisconsin.
I think it's a real picture.
She looks exactly how she looks.
No, and I do think it's a real picture. Let me get some of the ones up in locals.
It is a real picture.
It's a real. Okay, good. What's up with Cerno and his new live of Candace and anti-Semitism? Am I missing something? I didn't see it, so I don't know what you're talking about, Tzipora. Tzipora means bird in Hebrew. Cultivated Mind says, loving the locals chat, Viva. I didn't want to interrupt the show, so asking here, did your dogs like the snacks? They love it, Cultivated Mind. The only problem is they love it too much and they will eat themselves to death, so I can only give them like a few a day, because if we give them too much non-red meat diet, it changes their bowel movements. The Catholic Church denies salvation by grace through faith, says Ecuadorian.
I didn't say anything of that. I've said occasionally offensive things to my Catholic friends, but I didn't go that far.
Ecuadorian Nexus says all churches should be educating all children for free, as was done by the founding of our nation, the Massachusetts Bay Colony Proclamation, 1647.
But by the way, what that person is describing is that the Protestants perceive the difference between they and Catholics as Protestants by faith you get into heaven, whereas Catholicism they interpret as requiring you conform to certain conduct and deeds.
Sadly, both Canadian and California are are post-political, the incumbent party can completely mismanage the government and still return to power. I'll just say one thing about I would brought up a good Jewish boy. I thought Catholics and Protestants were both Christians, and so I mean I know they are, but I didn't understand why there was a disagreement. Marion's grandparents were Protestant and Catholic. They were excommunicated when they got married because back in the day they weren't allowed to get married. It's like, that's crazy. You're both Christian. Like, anyhow, so that's my.
Well, remember,
my
it's like Sunni Shia. So I believe it's in the Shia tradition. It's more, like the Ayatollah. You go through intermediaries, whereas the Sunni. Now, there's a particular historical dispute about that led to the divide about who is the legitimate heir to the prophet and so forth. But you have a somewhat similar tradition, and the Sunni tradition doesn't defer as much to institutional authority, and the Shia tradition does. And that ends up playing into a political role, because of how that translates into Iranian government, for example.
Well, actually, the only difference that I understood between Protestants and Catholics is that it tended to be Protestants were entrepreneurial in countries to which they emigrated, but that was probably just because it was Germans and Greeks were.
Well, I mean, I would say it's the individualist streak. In other words, Protestantism is very individual empowerment oriented. It's more, well, put it this way, it's more individualistic than Catholicism.
All that I care about is if you're a good moral person. So that's my underlying principle. Red Team 33 says, Viva, no question, comment, or smart ass remark. Just my compliments to you and Barnes. Well, thank you very much. We got one of the more recent movies in the Predator series has the plot line that the alien hunters viewed humans with autism as the ultimate prey. It was pathetic. I didn't know that. And then we got Pam Bondi.
This was you know who designed this, right? I mean, I get some of the people that are high functioning on the spectrum don't want to be, seen as deficient. So I get that. I understand where that comes from. But you can guess whoever came up with this. Whoever came up with it are the people that were responsible for causing it. And they're like, how do we get out of ever having to pay consequences?
It's the celebration parallax. It's not happening, but it's a good thing that it is. In this case, it's not happening, but you're a bigot for noticing it. So
yeah,
1,000%.
Exactly, and they're trying to make it so that it's not something that's damages. It's not considered an injury. If you can remove it from being labeled an injury, then even if what you did was wrong, you causing it can't be considered harm, and thus you can't be forced to pay anything. And I mean, I was curious, like, how are they going to get around? Robert Kennedy's the first person to do what Americans have been calling for decades, which is a meaningful inquiry and investigation into why our public health is deteriorating, why chronic disease is going up, why autism is so present, and more people are experiencing it in their friends and family life. Like this whole, it's always been with us and we just misdiagnosed it. I'm sorry. I knew no one growing up who was autistic. No one. Now I have multiple nephews and family members and friends that are.
And not just with spectrum of the high functioning, which you would otherwise never have noticed, or maybe they would have been a little peculiar, dysfunctional, nonverbal. I mean, in my immediate family and circle of friends, it's.
Oh, yeah. And what they're doing is trying to gaslight those parents into pretending that doesn't exist. I mean, but the whole goal was a conspiracy of big food, big pharma, big chemical companies that know they are likely accountable and responsible for the skyrocketing rate of autism amongst other chronic diseases, trying to normalize autism using the incredible capability of the left to gaslight on anything, anywhere, any place. I mean, that's what was so shocking back at the time with Orwell's book was like, would any government really say war is peace? Well, now where autism is good, disease is wonderful, disability is differently specially abled and unique. I mean, the insanity is full blown here, and the left is so indoctrinated in it, you can't educate them out of it, you can't teach them out of it, you just got to bulldoze them out of it.
Yep. And by the way, we are 31,500 watching live on Rumble. Make sure that you're subscribed and that you have notifications turned on. Notifications.
Oh, yeah. You can get Rumble Premium and get
download the app. Download the app, everybody, so you get instant notifications when the show goes live on CommuTube 3,200, which is pretty good. Make sure you're subscribed. Robert, what do we have left?
We got just a few left. We got the Karen Reed trial. We got the limits on class actions. We got when you can sue after death. We got the Obamacare task force up at the Supreme Court. And we've got are they using copyright law to shut down the internet?
Let's do a couple more here. Before we'll do the Karen Reed trial update so that we can give a proper shout out to Nick Rekieta, who's doing well, and God bless him, and the Obamacare. But before we do that, because I want to make sure that I get all, if I can, back on Rumble. We've got It's Time to Remove Democrats from the Ballot and Office, law.cornell, I am not sure what that law is, but that
By the way,
US
the Civil Rights Act of 1871 was targeting a particular political party too. And it was the Democratic Party busy violating people's civil rights.
Oh, you can't see. I'm not able to share. Oh, for goodness. I'm coming back. The 2-hour mark was up. It has to boot me from the computer. And it's not me, people. That's something in Rumble Studio, and I'm asking them to look into it. We've got Bevan Robert. Why is Larry David so maniacal, hateful of President Trump? He's a fucking lunatic, David.
Yeah. I mean, when it comes to politics, I mean, he thinks the Ukrainian guy's a hero. He and Bobby Kennedy are close, good buddies, good friends. And so I'll give Larry David credit for this. Him going full TDS has not reached Bobby Kennedy. Has not, like, if he would become anti-Bobby Kennedy, then I would have no respect for him at all. He's just a typical lefty. But at least he hasn't let it contaminate his personal friendships with people like Bobby Kennedy. So that will be the line we'll see, whether Larry David has gone full batshit insane or is just normal LA batshit insane.
I say give it time, and I can tell you this: the TDS turns people unfunny. And I never found Larry David funny in the first place. I don't find him funnier now.
I did find a lot of his stuff funny because I've done that same politically incorrect kind of stuff. Like when you say something that you kind of meant it as something else, but it came across as that. And I mean, like his whole MAGA hat thing when he realized he wanted to avoid people. So in the show Curb Your Enthusiasm, it's like, what if I wear a MAGA hat? I can avoid all the, like, all of a sudden motorcycle gangbangers are scared of him. Everybody he doesn't want to have dinner with won't schedule dinner with him because he's wearing a MAGA hat. So that kind of stuff, I give him some credit.
I never found Seinfeld funny. So that maybe that.
No, that's true. I was never a big Seinfeld fan either.
Dan Vicious says medical Lysenkoism. I like that. Harry Toe. Alan Artisan Soaps is the best soap. Alan is nonverbal with autism, and his family built the company to give him purpose.
That's
CJ,
awesome.
It's awesome.
And again, it's that people should get to choose and not be subject to these medical limitations.
No, it's not
based on the bad conduct of big corporations.
If there were a cure for it, people would find it. Much like a cure for blindness, a cure for paralysis. It's not because you call it a special ability and it's not a cope.
Heck, I'd take a pill if it could teach me how to cook without burning down the kitchen.
I see. If they had a pill to make me 6 inches taller, I still don't think I would take it because I like being small and nimble. Catholics believe you can work your way to heaven, whereas Protestants believe it is done by faith alone. Catholics also worship false. I'm not getting it. Randy Edward, don't get me into trouble here. Jarzy says, please go to YouTube and search for the Unsubscribed podcast show posted on April 26th called "Your Kids Are in Danger." SVU detective exposes Buffalo school rich angry.
I will say this: the Catholics got the churches right. I mean, those are some of those beautiful churches in the world.
I think
went to midnight mass at Notre Dame before the attack and the fire. Just gorgeous, beautiful. They built a lot of the cathedrals using old Masonic techniques. Mike Lee joked that today, to try to get approval for the cathedral, it'd probably take you 8 centuries just to get the permits first. But I mean, they built them over places that usually have sort of water and land connections, so it creates this effect that is maximized at key times that really enhances your experience. So I think that, I love all my little small white churches out in the woods, out in the countryside, little wooden churches and the little white panels and the little steeple. I love all those. But the Catholic churches they were better, even if they stole money to get it.
Barnes, I feel like we've been yelling at the top of our collective voices for the Trump admin and is not fighting fast enough for those who have put him in office. Amos Miller is one of the cases.
We just have to keep putting pressure on. Again, I have great respect for what President Trump has done. I do think Pam Bondi has the right intentions, but when they're not living up to it, they need to hear from us because they're not going to hear it from Washington. Washington doesn't like them doing anything. So it requires court of public opinion, constant, continuous pressure so that they do what they were elected to do.
And we got Ithaca 37 Cato says, Pam Bondi to Barnes. Wait, you expect me to really work my job full time? I won't appear. All right, we got Schnookums, $5. Robert, what can we impeach the judges blocking executive branch authority in the face of SCOTUS rulings for breach of their oaths? The answer is yes, but someone's got to do it, Schnookums.
Yeah, and all you do is scratch the surface. You'll find other crimes and illegality, these state judges that got arrested.
Feel weird calling the guy Schnookums. That's usually a pet name for people. Bob Soapdish says, is Trump aware how bad Pam Bondi looks right now?
That's not clear. That's why we have to keep putting pressure in the court of public opinion.
Oh, Dave, would you please reach out to Ash in America, a.k.a. About Ash Epps? I know Ash in America. I had her on. I've been on with her. She is going up against the Colorado NAACP again. They filed an appeal for the case. She won. Absolutely, I'll reach out to her, Denise, and
there's a couple of other examples. I mean, you got these states passing laws saying we're going to give special benefits to people based on your race. That's always been illegal. So it's like, hopefully we're going to
no,
see
Robert,
some
but
actions.
it's what I like. I saw it on your Bourbon with Barnes where you were talking about the far right. I think it was Jordan Peterson, but it might not have been specifically that. But we see like the identity politics on the left and the right. It plays off on a spectrum where the left says we're going to elevate people because of their race, religion, or creed, and on the far right they say we're going to demote people because of
people they believe in the same race-based identity politics.
So it is but yeah, the idea of giving someone a raise because they're black is just as bad as
we're a
firing someone
race-neutral country by constitutional law, and
From
that's
your
why
mouth
Washington's saying we're going to give money to you if you're black, but not if you're white.
From your mouth
that's
to-
illegal, and what should happen is there should be not only lawsuits, there should be criminal cases brought in these cases. These politicians are violating criminal law. The Civil Rights Act of 1871 has a criminal counterpart, has a criminal component. You can criminally enforce this. They did it. They went after January 6th defendants using a lot of a crazy interpretation of this. Well, it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander. That door's open now. It's time for the left to experience the consequences of their own bad ideas and bad conduct.
This is actually in Canada, Robert. Black Entrepreneur Program. The BEP is a partnership between the Government of Canada, Black-led business organizations, and financial institutions with an investment of. There's
also, you dig in, you'll often find that it's a bunch of rich white liberals using black people as fronts to hoard in all the cash.
Well, there's no such thing as positive discrimination or positive racism. It's racism. It's discrimination.
Now, speaking of Obamacare, not to say there was a connection between the two, the Obamacare task force goes to SCOTUS. And Pam Bondi apparently is unaware that she is currently defending a Biden administration position that is directly contrary to the Trump administration's policies on these task forces.
It's the second time we've seen Bondi apparently not aware of a case that's going up. But what's the nature of this one?
So this case is already before the Supreme Court of the United States.
So it filed under the previous AG, so now they swap in Bondi's name, and so she's got to get up to speed with the case.
That's where Bondi should be intervening and reversing the position and dropping their petition for cert, but she's not. So what Obamacare did was try to set up a permanent bureaucracy immune from future Republican presidents, right? So Obamacare set up a task force, and this task force was going to be appointed by this other little board, not by the president, never confirmed by the Senate. And to give you an idea of how powerful this task force was going to be, this task force was going to determine which healthcare services a insurance company has to reimburse, the mandatory minimum. This is the power to control all of healthcare insurance in the entire nation. And it is given to people who were never elected, never appointed by elected officials, and had a part of a branch of government that doesn't exist in the Constitution of the United States. This fourth branch, this administrative branch. As people have been pointing out, I saw another recent video on it. The Yes Minister show from the UK from 1980 to 1985 really did a great job showing you the degree of insanity of the administrative state, and that it's only reached full board now. But this is a classic example. So it goes up to the Supreme Court, and the issue is these people are being appointed in a way that directly contradicts the Article 2. Article 2 says there can't be anybody exercising executive power unless they have been selected by the American people in the case of the president and the vice president. They've been appointed by the president and confirmed by the Senate, again, being appointed and confirmed by elected officials, the so-called political departments of government. If you see that in government, in a court case, like all the immigration cases, where they say immigration policy is for the political branches. What they mean is those branches of government that are elected by the people. It is not respecting the Article 1 or Article 2 powers that is required under the Constitution. It's respecting the will of the American people and selecting those people in those positions of power. It's about respecting democracy that they are trying to kill with their liberal judicial activism. But so the other way was to have these little bureaucrats as a sort of permanent apparatus appointed by other bureaucrats to dictate and determine all of healthcare policy for America. And finally, a court, a decade late, in my opinion, came in and said, hold on a second. These are either inferior officers or principal officers. What's an inferior? Or they're unconstitutional. That's it. There's no other option. There's no third option. There's no Article 4 branch of power administrative state option. The administrative state is anti the Constitution, anti the Constitution's balance of powers. So what they said was, are they inferior officers? Well, inferior officers are people whose decisions, whose policies, whose actions can be reversed by their supervisors. Instead, the government said, well, they can be fired by their elected supervisors. So that means that they're subject to the supervision of those officers. Except the law specifically says that their decisions can't be reversed or even reviewed by the elected officers or those appointed by elected officials. So what does that mean when you have the power to make policy that can't be reviewed by any superior officer? That's called a principal officer. And a principal officer under Article 2 must be appointed by the president, must be confirmed by the Senate. And the Obamacare task force never complied with this at all. So hopefully the Supreme Court will reinforce the Constitution, which again, what is it about? It's not even about Article 1, Article 2, Article 3, or balance of powers. It's about respecting you, the American voter, where we've given you the power to decide public policy. We respect that by deferring to their decision-making, but only having those people make decisions. When people can make decisions that were never elected to office or appointed by elected officials to office, then we have made America a non-democratic government. We've made it an anti-democratic government. That's what the left wants.
Well, yeah,
and what they're pursuing.
I think I liked it. Elon Musk called it. It's a bureaucratic government. It's
government by bureaucracy, not democracy. And so hopefully this could reinstate the end of this administrative state imperial power impervious to the American people. So it's a big decision that goes beyond healthcare. It goes to whether or not the American people have power over their own government or not.
Robert, before we get into the Karen Reid updates, let me just remind everybody that there is a merch store. I've been saying we're going to up the game on the merch, but get some merch if you want to support the channel. The Friends Don't Let Friends Vote Democrat is timeless. You got your Trump for president in there. Louis the Lobster Returns to the Sea is a book that I wrote. My wife put together. Abigail Martin, the daughter of one of our community members, did the illustration. It's beautiful. I got everyone the link there.
Not to give away the ending, but do you eat the lobster at the end?
Someone eats the lobster at the end. Because such is life. Everything on Earth eventually gets eaten, even if it's just by the worms. We have, some of our butterflies have not been hatching, but as is statistically expected. And I take the ones that are not going to make it, and there's a lizard down the street. I give it to the lizard. And if I don't give it to the lizard, the ants get it. It's an amazing thing how fast ants find a butterfly.
Cycle of life.
It's
kind of like
goes to
the
waste.
cycle of corruption, which keeps going on in the Karen Reid trial, despite all evidence suggesting this case it's a travesty and tragedy of justice that it was ever brought against Karen Reid.
They had a hung jury the first time. They are having a retrial right now. I had on Nick. Was it last week only that I had Nick on?
No, this week. It was this week. I think the trial started this week.
Yeah, for gosh sake, every day feels like a month. So Rekieta came on, and he's back, people. You can all go suck a lemon for those of you who are wishing for his demise. And he's covering
looking good, feeling good, doing good, covering the shows on a daily basis with Andrew Bronco, Law of Self-Defense, who I agree with about 75% of the time, disagree with about 25% of the time. But he does very good, informed, intelligent analysis as well. So if you want to follow the day-to-days or catch up on the summaries or the rest, the best place on the Karen Reid trial, best place to go is Rekieta Law on YouTube or Rumble. And there you can find he and the Law of Self-Defense. Andrew Bronco, his channel's also simulcasting it. They're doing it together. Occasionally, Good Logic is hopping on with them, and they're doing a really good job covering the trial. In my view, it's another case of egregious government misconduct. A cop died either by accident or intent, but due to other cops' actions, and they decided to shift the blame to her, make up evidence, fabricate a case. But they got a corrupt judge, a mediocre, partisan, prejudicial jury pool. That is unreliable in even cases like this that shouldn't have any politics in it. But when you're implicating the corruption of the police department of a powerful city police department like Boston, infamous for its corruption, going back many centuries.
I've got to go rewatch Copland. I remember not liking it, but I mean, this is Copland level corruption from what I understand, like small time corruption of cops behaving badly. And well, shit, someone's got to go into the box for this. So let's pick Karen Reid. Retrial because the first trial was a hung jury and they decided to re-prosecute. If you go back,
the judge just makes one dumb ruling after another. People want to see what dumb judges look like. This is a good case to watch. You can see what happens when you put liberal Democratic women, semi-competent women in power. you get disasters like the judge handling the Karen Reed trial.
Well, this week, from what my understanding, Rakeda gave us a bit of an update for the opening statements, which were more or less coherent from the prosecution. They've taken the jury to the actual crime scene, which is, they did it during the first trial as well, just to show them what they think the lay of the land looks like so the jury can appreciate it. They've introduced that Karen Reed's blood alcohol was at 0.93 or 0.093, whatever it is, a little bit over the legal limit at 9 a.m, suggesting that she was drunk driving. And if they say that she was drunk and that she hit her boyfriend, it would seem that the drunkenness would take away from the murder charge and maybe
the intentional homicide.
Yeah, so
but basically they were looking for somebody to frame, and they framed her, and they likely planted evidence at the scene, changed the timing of things. I mean, for those that don't know what the case is about, a police officer was found dead in the front yard after a party at other cops' house. So you might ask yourself, how does the person that doesn't live at that house, who wasn't at that party, how does she get blamed? It was because they were aware of her prior relationship, prior conflicts, and that she might have been drinking the night before and thought, voila, we can frame her. And that's what the cops went about doing. And they did it systemically and systematically. And it doesn't even require they sit there and say, oh, we want to frame somebody else, as much as we want to protect my pal, my buddy, my friend from getting into trouble. Some suggest that the way in which this is done suggests maybe cops do this a lot.
Mm-hmm.
My own experience has been that your rogue actors within a police department, plenty of good cops out there. So for the cops watching, cop buddies and pals of mine, not referencing you obviously, but I'm referencing those rogue cops that get into positions of power are the worst actors, and they appear to be the kind that were part of this case. And you can imagine the panic. Let's say he died by pure accident, but it's something that would make them look bad or get them into criminal liability or at least lose their jobs. The temptation to blame somebody else is just off the charts. It just becomes survival. But that's what it looks like that case is. But if you want to see skilled lawyering, don't watch the prosecutor. Don't watch the judge, because that's where you see skillless lawyering. If you want to see skilled lawyering, watch the defense lawyer in the case, who's one of the best in the country. And the only place to watch it where you'll get good objective analysis is Rakeda Law on YouTube and Rumble.
And because again, if like I'm not following it day in and day out, it's still too much, and it's too much for me to pay.
And you can also like fast forward to like the part where they're covering it. If you want to cover it at the end of the night, just go where the breaks are and listen to their analysis, and they give really good, quick summations that are very, very effective.
Plus, in real time, if you're working, turn it on. It's like not noise.
Yeah, something in the background. You can tune in now and then. You can see some interesting dramatics. Nick is the master of trial presentations and hasn't lost his touch in that regard at all.
And just so people understand how absurd the case is, that they allege that the Karen Reed ran over her boyfriend because she was mad, whatever.
So mad, left him in the front lawn, even though his injuries aren't consistent with that.
Yeah, dude, the vehicle isn't consistent. No broken glass. He had lacerations on his arm.
At 3 o'clock cleaning the sweep, said there was nobody there. So there are people apparently Googling, how long to freeze the dead body. He was likely died inside the house. They likely brought him back outside the house, like at 4:35 in the morning when they figured out who they were going to blame, and said, okay, dump him there. We'll blame her. Later on, get some evidence, bang in the back of her car, sprinkle when police have custody of the car, sprinkle the glass around him and go, voila. Mm-hmm. The problem when you do something like that, what webs we weave when first we set out to deceive, is that there's certain, if a car actually hit him, there's certain forensic evidence that should be present on his body that's not there at all.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's one of the many giveaways that this was a fake case. And it's embarrassing that the judges and prosecutors have allowed it to go forward. Even Biden's FBI acknowledged there was no legitimate case against her. So it's outrageous that this case is that someone still has to fight for their life, who is, by most independent, objective reviews, completely innocent.
We are going to go over to vivabarneslaw.locals.com right now. If you are so inclined to become a supporter, because this is for supporters only. This is our after party.
Yeah, we'll discuss when are class actions limited, when can you sue after you're dead, and the big copyright case that threatens all of our access to the internet, currently pending before SCOTUS. And answering every tipped question of $5 or more at vivabarneslaw.locals.com.
And I will be live with Myron Gaines tomorrow, so expect a saucy stream at 4 o'clock. I'll be doing a live coverage of the election. If Pierre Poilievre wins a majority, I will be exquisitely happy only from a predictions perspective. If he wins a minority, I'll still be very happy. If the Liberals win a minority, I will be very angry, even though the bigger bet of not a majority government will come through. If the Liberals get a majority, I will be devastated.
It's time to invade Canada. We got to invade them, take them out, invade them. You know, to figure out some different places to send the commies, keep the good ones, kick out the commies.
Forget invading Canada. You're gonna. I say it'll be a matter of years. Alberta, Manitoba, Saskatchewan will secede and will join America. So I'll be doing a live stream tomorrow night. And I'll be popping on with a bunch of other people's streams to see what's going on there. So that is it, Barnes. What do you have on for this week?
Just live bourbon with Barnes each night. The might be on at some point. No, next week will be with Richard Barris. This week, other than legal work, vivabarneslaw.locals.com. Bourbon with Barnes, Monday night through Thursday night at 9-ish Eastern time, where we do live AMAs, answering all the questions, law, politics, you name it, right there at vivabarneslaw.locals.com.
Because Barnes still does have real legal work. I have the luxury of going crazy on the internet. All right, people, we are going to locals right now. So thank you all. If you're coming in,
before we go.
Oh, yes, sir. That's Encryptus, by the way.
Raid.
Oh, shoot, you're right.
Raid. And I've already done this. Cool Frog is on tonight. And that was one of the most successful raids that has actually happened when we did that the other day. We had over 300 of our people watch him for an additional 4 hours after you dropped him into that. So it seems to be that our audience seems to like him, and I'm actually going to be on his show a little bit later tonight as well.
Okay, well then, obviously, I was going to say go do Salty Cracker, but nobody's going to need to know to raid Salty Cracker. Go raid the Cool Frog. What's his name?
Cool Frog.
Cool Frog. Okay, good. Go raid the Cool Frog and let them know from whence you came, everybody. Oh, and by the way, if it does, in fact, if you find yourself being directed to Salty Cracker despite the raid, let us know, because we were wondering if there's something of a glitch of the raid. Thus far, I think it's been working properly. So enjoy Cool Frog. If you're not coming over to locals, vivabarneslaw.locals.com. I will see you tomorrow. Godspeed, everybody, and locals. Encryptus, can I go? I can update the stream.
Give it just one moment as everybody starts to trickle on over. It takes a second for raid to go through. By the way, while that's happening, I've been watching the trial all week with Ricada. The coverage is excellent, by the way. I had reasonable doubt on day one. The fact that this is in a retrial is absolutely insanity. And if there's any juror who actually can say with a straight face this person is guilty of something,
beyond a reasonable doubt,
or that the prosecutor could actually think that they could bring this case and convince somebody beyond a reasonable doubt, is truly insane and such a waste of money.
Well, let's see how it goes. And while we're doing that, Victor Cardone says, I heard Tish James has hired Hunter Biden's attorney. Please tell me her legal bills were not paid by tax. These were from the beginning. Passion Moyer, we got the crossing in the streams. All right, Encryptus, we can do it?
Yep, good to go.
All right, locals, here we come. Rumble. See you all tomorrow, and enjoy the day, night. Bada bing.